All right, welcome everyone. It is Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, and you are here at the Athens-Clarke County City Hall for our monthly agenda setting session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission, and it will be preceded by a special called session with just a single item on the agenda that we'll describe in just a couple of minutes. I'll go ahead and begin by asking the clerk to call roll for us.
Davenport.
Here.
Link. Here. Taylor. Here. Wright.
Present.
Fisher.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Culpepper. Myers.
Here.
Thornton.
Here.
Hamby.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we'll begin with the civility pledge provided to us by the Georgia Municipal Association. And we embrace that the way we govern ourselves is often as important as the positions we take, that our collective decisions will be better when differing views have had the opportunity to be fully vetted and considered, that all people have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness, that we value all input and we commit to conduct ourselves at all times with civility and courtesy to each other. All right, so this evening, we just have a single item of new business for a special called session, and we do have public input on this item alone in just a moment, and I'll describe how public input will work for all the occasions tonight. We'll have this opportunity for public input. After we have this, when we have our agenda setting meeting, we'll have an opportunity on the consent agenda. We'll have individual opportunities on each of the planning and zoning items, and then we'll have an opportunity for public input on old and new business. Every opportunity for public input will be a 3-minute opportunity for any member of the public who would like to speak. When you begin speaking, the light in front of the clerk will turn green. When you have 30 seconds remaining in your 3-minute slot, the light will turn yellow. And when your 3 minutes has concluded, the light will turn red, and I'll thank you for your time with us, and then we'll have to move on to the next speaker. So is there any member of the public who would like to provide public input on the single item that is on our special called session agenda? It appears we have neither have holiday light lovers nor haters in the room. Because this is one item of new business, we have to consider it under suspension of rules. Do I hear a motion for suspension of rules?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Hamby and a second from Commissioner Fisher for suspension of rules. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries, and we'll move on to this item of substance, and that is a memorandum of understanding with the Downtown Development Authority for holiday lighting. As you can see outlined in the agenda report, there's going to be a sort of distribution of responsibility between Central Services and the Downtown Development Authority's agent for some additional heightened lighting through the holiday season. And so I'd entertain a motion regarding this item. Commissioner Hamby?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that makes sure that there's cheer for all to hear.
I'll second.
That's corny.
All right, I've got a motion in favor from Commissioner Hamby, second from Commissioner Wright. Commissioner Hamby, any remarks?
Sure, thank you. And as you mentioned, this is a good partnership between the ADDA and Central Services that allows for extra lighting along Clayton Street and College Avenue. Josh Coons, some of y'all may know Josh Coons, actually did the design work for us. He also did a lot of the design work out at what the Botanical Garden does with their winter wonderlands. So it's a good partnership. It allows us for ADDA to look at those streets all the way from Thomas to Hull Street and all the way up College Avenue up to City Hall here. And it opens the door for an opportunity for Central Services, like the mayor said, to light up some other places in downtown that haven't lighted. They've been lit, but not lighted, so there is a difference. So this gives them an opportunity to broaden that and really make downtown an attractive destination for the holidays. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wright, any further?
I just appreciate the speed at which this is moving forward through the entities for this holiday season, and we look forward to the community's feedback on how colorful it is, and so that this pilot can be refined for next holiday season.
Yeah,
And hopefully it'll stay up during any, football celebrations that might need to be had.
And it's funny, Commissioner Wright, at some of the ADDA meetings, but when we were discussing this, said it's ironic that the biggest Grinch in Athens, meaning me, is promoting Christmas and holiday lights downtown. So, they take the Grinch out of everybody, I guess.
Amazing.
I see your heart growing as we speak, Commissioner
Oh,
Hammond.
do you? Oh, yeah.
Anything further? All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, following our agenda-setting meeting, we will enter into an executive session for discussion of real estate acquisition and/or disposal. Can I hear a motion for entering executive session?
So moved. Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Thornton, second from Commissioner Davenport. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, do need a motion that we will adjourn upon conclusion of that executive session. May I have such a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Fisher, second from Commissioner Davenport. All in favor of adjourning upon conclusion of our executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. Before we go ahead and begin our agenda-setting session, I do want to thank members of the Youth Commission for being with us tonight. While they are currently members of the Youth Commission, I hold open the possibility that they may be members of the County Commission before we know it. So exciting that I think we've got some leaders in training here.
Any
Commissioner
of the
Thornton.
youth commissioners that go to Cedar Shoals, please see me. Cedar Shoals, calling all Cedar Shoals, okay? Okay, go for it.
All right, and we'll connect you with Commissioner Thornton. All right, so again, this is the time when we have our agenda-setting session. We have a consent agenda. These items have been approved for single vote, first Tuesday in November, and these are items 1 through 9. And so I want to see, is there any member of the public who would like to speak to any of these items 1 through 9? We'll begin with public input and then turn to the commission to see if they want to remove any item for discussion. So is there any member of the public who would like to speak to any consent agenda item? Again, that's 1 through 9 on the consent agenda. Is there any member of the commission who would like to remove any of these items for discussion? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, item 1, 6, and 8, mostly just for a couple questions.
All right, so we will move 1, 6, and 8 to discussion. All right. Commissioner?
In addition to that, number 4, please.
All right, all right. 1, 4, 6, and 8. We'll move to discussion. All right. Any others? All right. We'll go ahead now and have our presentations on the 3 planning and zoning items, and then public input individually on those. I'm going to shift down to where Assistant Manager Sanders is. Right, we're being joined by Planning Director Bruce Lonnie, who is going to take us through items 10 through 12 on our agenda tonight. All right, item 10 is regarding a special use permit at 480 South Village Avenue. So, Mr. Lyon, thanks for being with us.
All right, very good, thank you. All these items that you're hearing tonight will be for the Planning Commission on October 2nd. The first item is our only zoning action that came via an application, and that is for special use at 480 South Village Avenue. The reason for the special use request is to seek approval for a sorority. A sorority use in a commercial office zone property. It's worth noting this is also in the Millage Avenue corridor overlay, which has some unique standards to it, but those were navigated with the submittal to a large degree. The request is to demolish the front building that exists on the site, and you'll see photos in a minute of where we're talking about. You're all familiar with it, I know. and construct a new building that would accommodate the assembly space for the sorority in that same location with a slightly larger footprint. This would reconfigure the parking and add 5 additional parking spaces. This new building would be 2 stories tall with a full basement, and the existing apartments on the site would be converted to sorority housing. There are 7 variances that are requested as part of this application. Those variances and the request can be considered under one vote. So here's an aerial view that centers in on the property, specifically there outlined in the red and black dash. This was the Columns Apartments at one point. You can kind of tell from the landscaping in the front, that's kind of gone through some changes over the years. But here's another view of the property that puts it in context. You can see its proximity to Clark Central High School, the parking area for the high school. To the north of the subject property, we have an existing sorority. To the south, at the corner, we have a private residence that has 2 dwellings on it. And then the Young Life operation is immediately behind that residence and close to the Clark Central property along Baxter Street. Future land use would not change with this request. It would remain mixed-density residential. The zoning would remain the same. The underlying zoning and the Millage Avenue overlay would not be impacted, but the special use would be an added aspect of regulation with this if approved. And here's some photographs. So this is what you see from South Millage. You notice Somerville up in the top. These apartments have been here for quite a while. Very narrow lot, very long. Property, the image to the left is the property to the south, which is that single-family residence. On the right-hand side of the screen is that existing sorority to the north. And then these 4 photographs basically take you around the site. I want you to maybe notice the proximity of the driveway to fence line and tree line. That's also property line. So the existing conditions on this site are largely covered in structure or paving already. Here's the site plan that was submitted and amended during the course of the special use process. This is what the Planning Commission heard at their last meeting. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen is Millage, and then that driveway circulates around the cluster of buildings in the middle with that parking kind of nested in the hollow. All of the buildings on the left-hand side of the screen that sort of pop up as different rectangles, those exist and would remain in their current state. The square that's to the front is what is going to be replacing the existing structure. Other thing worth noting is the access to the rear comes via an alley that goes along the Young Life property. So this property line really ends at the back of the parking stalls there against the Clark Central property line. So a lot of coverage from edge to edge and top to bottom. Oh, yeah, not working. All right, thanks. Thank you for that. I don't need to start over, do I? Okay, good.
No,
All right.
please don't.
So, so we got 7 variances that came in with this, and they are summarized on the screen in front of you. There's more detail in the staff report. But they are asking, the applicant is asking for additional lot coverage beyond the 65% maximum to go to 85.1%. Current conditions on the site are already above the 65%. Asking to decrease the minimum landscaped area, which is basically the inverse of the lot coverage, from 35% to 14.9%. They are looking to increase the maximum floor area ratio from 0.5, and that's the ratio of the floor space of the building as a percentage of the square footage of the lot. So a 1-to-1 ratio would be, on a 1-acre lot, would be 43,560 square feet. So the maximum floor area ratio in the Millage Avenue overlay is 0.5, and they are asking to go to 0.65, so slightly more density. Reduce the required number of parking spaces from 154 to 35 on-site and 45 off-site. The 154 figure is calculated off of the assembly space in the sorority. That's how code reads. The 35 on-site would be sufficient for the number of bedrooms plus the house mother or leadership. That would be available on-site, and the 45 off-site would be provided through an agreement. Right now, the applicant is suggesting that would come with the school district for shared parking at Clark Central, and that shared parking would be mostly used during large events, parent weekends, football games, and chapter meetings. Chapter meetings would also be accommodated with campus bus system. The fifth variance is to allow for no additional screening of the rear parking area adjacent to Clark Central. That's why I pointed out, you notice the paving goes all the way to the property line. So there's really no good opportunity for planting at that rear western property line because it's right up against an alley that is shared with Young Life. Sixth variance is to reduce the minimum amount of conserved tree canopy from 25% to 7.3%. Related to that, to reduce the minimum amount of total tree canopy, so not just the conserved, but all the canopy that's required, from 50% to 32.5%. And I know trees get discussed when we come before the commission, so I can also tell you that right now, the site has less than 10% of conservable trees. So they couldn't make the 25% with the existing trees on site anyway. So knowing that they have less than 10% present, what they're asking for is a finished condition of 32.5%. So more or less a tripling of what's currently out there on the property. Planning Commission's recommendation was approval with conditions for the reasons that they found it to be compatible with our comprehensive plan and that it retained and redeveloped existing structures. They found it to be compatible with that future land use map in the comprehensive plan, the zoning map, and associated ordinance. It does satisfy the special use criteria, and the sorority use for this parcel is appropriate. The Planning Commission also found that all 7 requested variances are recommended for approval, and they did proffer 2 conditions. Those conditions are these. 1, that a direct sidewalk connection be constructed from the front, really the front of that new building, to the public sidewalk along Millage Avenue. Second condition, to summarize the words up there, is that the proposed parking agreement with Clark County School District or with an appropriate substitute as determined by the planning director would be put in place and recorded prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued for the project. So their final recommendation was approval with conditions.
All right, thanks, Bruce, I appreciate it. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak to this item? Just let us know your name, place of residence.
Good evening, I'm Brett Thurman, Armour Trout Matheny Thurman, 330 Research Drive, Athens. I represent Alpha Zeta Delta along with David Matheny, who's the architect on the project. I appreciate all the input from staff during this process, as well as the unanimous support from the Planning Commission. After tabling the project for a month, we resubmitted a much improved plan for the site. The fire marshal was very pleased with the increased width of existing drive aisles to 12 feet, the increased space on the parking lot side so that their ladder truck could put down stabilizers without having to move cars, and the 3 fire department connections, 1 for each main building area, we proposed at the front so that their pumper truck doesn't have to actually get onto the property to connect to the sprinkler system. We designed a stormwater solution under the parking lot to detain the rainfall recharge amount. All larger events are also contained in the gravel bed, so there's no increase in stormwater from the site. In fact, we'll now be directing that water to the private alley, reducing stormwater that normally now flows to Millage Avenue and around the intersection and down Baxter Street. There is sufficient parking on site for the number of members living in the site, plus the house mother. Our parking falls within the range of on-site parking for other fraternities and sororities. For additional parking, Clark Central High School will be approached for an additional 45 spaces to use during chapter meetings and special events. We believe this is sufficient parking for the sororities' needs as they have a transportation policy limiting automobile access, and they prefer that they share rides or they come by bus or they walk. A lot of them are going to be close enough they can just walk to the house. The 7 variances that we requested are all related to the site size. The site is already non-conforming, and the Planning Commission agreed that all the variances were acceptable. The front apartment building will be demolished for a larger chapter house. The apartment building just cannot be renovated to provide the space required for the sorority. The new chapter house design has been before the Historic Preservation Committee, and we have received a certificate of appropriateness. Also, my client agrees with the 2 conditions in the staff report. We will provide the sidewalk, access to the Millage Avenue sidewalk, and we will obtain a parking agreement with Clark Central and have it recorded before the project can receive a certificate of occupancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman. Is there anyone else here to speak to this item? All right, this is in District 4. Commissioner Wright, it's your lucky night.
We have so much Greek. I'm sure all the other district commissioners are happy that this is in District 4.
Yes, ma'am.
It fits, right? What is so unique about this for the Greeks who live in their houses, there's usually a cafeteria, food service in the main area. This is going to be apartments. They get to have their own unit. They're not dependent on, anyway, much more independent. I think they're going to have a great time when they do rush in selling that point for this, I believe it's a new sorority coming, isn't it, Bruce? Anyway, they'll be, I think it's a new entity coming. So, anyway, I think that's good. Good and unique because they're taking what's there as far as the living arrangements, the apartments, and giving it a concentrated group that knows each other. Except the difference is now there'll be an adult on site in the new building. Bruce, can you give us a little summary of the staff's denial areas?
Sure. What we were looking at was kind of the need for the variances, and we take a very kind of black and white read on variance requests. And typically, we use those 5 criteria, which we use the analysis of these requests. And one of those criteria is the variance kind of the applicant's making? And we found that some of these kind of are. Now, it is a tough site. It is a property that already has considerable amount of coverage beyond what commercial office zone would allow for. But the construction of that new building up front was going beyond the existing square footage of the structure that was there, and it was creating the need for some of these variances. And so that's where staff's analysis was coming from, is the applicant making the issue? And we found that, in part, yes.
Okay. I have not read the whole report, so I'm going to
very
ask you a
long.
question. You can let me know if it's in there or if it's additional information. If you go back to the variances with the percentages on there.
Wait. I don't think that's the right. Here we go.
Yeah, I was wondering if we would be able to see what these numbers are on the current site. Is that in the report?
It is.
Okay, so I'll find that, because like you said, some of this stuff, it came already without the tree canopy. It already came with the pavement right to the property line.
That's correct.
But I think it's also important that this has been designed with the fire, considerations in that. And then the other part with the tightness of that driveway and everything, because they're in apartments, there's not like one of the big trucks that would come and have to stack, the food supply type arrangement that would happen in a typical cafeteria style. I think it's a catering style kitchen that they're putting in there. But it's a little different version, but I think it's a good use of the existing, what's there. But I will be reading through this, and I will, if I get emails about it and you guys aren't copied on it, I'll make sure you're included. And so also let me know if there's also questions that you have, because I'll study it better soon.
Got Commissioner Fisher and then Commissioner Link.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to ask staff about the impact on Clark Central Schools for with the parking and things of that nature, and with this becoming apartments. I guess one of my concerns would be sometime people parking over there after they've been out or whatever, or they got guests, and although Clark Central have given them okay to park, I do wonder if was that any type of impact to that, or did staff think about that from an apartment perspective, and sometimes late night partying and school, the parking lot may get trashed. So again, I'm just asking.
And this may be a good question also for the applicant, but my understanding with what the conversation has been with the school district is to have some well-defined times when that parking is available and times when it's not.
Okay.
So it's not available 24/7 for the sorority's use. It's got a limitation on when it's available, and I think it's focused on chapter meetings and chapter events
Okay.
only. I believe I'm correct.
And I'm assuming they would coordinate
Correct.
with school, with Clark Central, just in case they're not having things going on and stuff like that.
And it's an annual agreement.
Okay.
And so that will have the chance for review. And if the school district finds that they need to go a different direction, then they would coordinate with the planning department with the identification of a new spot for those spaces
Okay.
and getting an agreement recorded for that spot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Link, then Commissioner Davenport.
Yeah, so a lot of these variances basically reflect existing non-conforming conditions, correct?
To a large extent,
Yeah, okay, so they're actually adding trees to the site.
there's a
to
net
get
increase.
Closer,
Yes.
okay. And there are 34 residents?
Correct.
I believe my husband actually lived in these apartments when he was in college back in the mid-90s. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So there's two questions. And Commissioner Fisher and Wright piggyback a little bit off of them. So if we approve this in November, the parking agreement with CCSD is not, it doesn't come back to us if that doesn't go through.
It doesn't come back to the commission?
That's correct.
Correct, no, we would
Okay.
work with it administratively.
All right, and, okay, thank you for being on this page. So you're increasing the lot coverage from 85, but you're reducing so you're increasing the lot coverage, so there's gonna be more structure, and the total tree canopy now is like 7.3 or 10%, and it's going to increase to 32.5%. Where are those trees gonna go? I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to do the math in my head. If you're increasing the lot size and increasing the density of this area, and you already got the two or three trees,
That's a great
baby
question.
trees right now in the front. So where's the tripling of these, the
So-
32 gonna go?
So, and you can kind of make them out, the sort of spirograph kind of circles on there, those are the trees. That would be new plantings, and so they're adding a tree island in the middle of the run of all those angled spaces, so that's a new tree. There, I believe, are two new trees that are going in on the western end, the rear of the property between the last two buildings, and there are new plantings proposed out in front of the new construction. And that area out there, trees that had been there before were removed.
Yeah.
And so they're putting back the three that are shown there. They're having to navigate around utilities and proximity of the front of the new building. We can't have them too close.
No, I support this project, but, this village has got the big oaks, the big walnuts, the big trees, and it's just beautiful when you drive down and you see these historic homes and sororities and buildings, and, you want to kind of keep that aesthetic. So I'm just curious.
And that is part of the Millage Avenue overlay, is to protect the trees that are in those front lawn areas. Prior to this request, those trees that would have been protected were removed. So this is a bit of a compensatory measure that we're seeing with this plan, is to get some trees back.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Wright.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted to add. One, just to quickly, before I forget, Patrick, about the trees. When there was a grant that Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful, the Tree Council, and I think UPS did, to replant from where the trees had died and everything. And it was amazing how many of the property owners said, no, thank you. They said, we will water the tree, we will plant it, we will water it, we will tend to it for its delicate year and a half. And so they had to increase their outreach and get a little bit more involved to convince. But it was amazing how many people said no to that. But the other thing I wanted to say was that there are, can you go back to the map that shows Clark Central? because I'm not sure if you can see it, but do you guys know the sorority house at Baxter? On the other corner, it's called like the wedding cake sorority. They use parking in Clark Central. They're one of the sororities that has an arrangement for overflow parking. And I think some of the ones similar to this property that back up where you are, even on the other side of the entrance of Clark Central off of Millage. So I think that there's been a long standing, and like you're saying, if you abuse it, if you abuse it, then you have to go elsewhere, which means they would be going farther to prove it. And the Sigma Chi house downtown, it also had a pretty elaborate proof of parking that they provided from off-site as well. So these are the things they're doing because the cars are coming to town, and we luckily they're not using them all the time, but they do have to park them, storing. Some of it's more storage. And again, this has got the specifics to it, to not interfere or litter. Thanks,
Mr.
Bruce.
Thornton?
This might not be directly related. I see that the Planning Commission approved with conditions. Planning Commission. So, that was good with did the Planning Department have any thoughts? Are you good with this?
Yes.
How long had you been working on this process at the Planning Department?
The planning staff had been talking with the applicant really since the spring, I believe.
Okay. So, in 2025?
Yes, ma'am.
And here we are in October 2025? Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay.
Anything else on this one? All right, we have 2 text amendments. We'll hear about the first of those and then have public input on that.
All right. First text amendment is largely driven by some activity that took place at the state level. So we have a section of code for home occupations. It's kind of our incubator chapter of our zoning code. It's a great way for folks to start businesses and not have additional overhead of having rent or other property in which to operate. And then there are certain types of businesses that are allowed to function as home occupations. And one of those has been cottage industry type food production. So the jams and the jellies and that kind of thing, some degree of baking. Well, during the 2025 session of the Assembly, House Bill number 398 changed some of the ways that the cottage industry operates, and it removes the requirement for those operators to obtain a license from the Georgia Department of Agriculture. Well, the wording on our code says, produce the license that you get from the Department of Ag, and we'll move forward with your cottage food industry home occupation. So if they couldn't have that, we couldn't have that in our code if it doesn't exist anymore. So the purpose of this text amendment is to remove the reference to that Department of Agriculture licensing for the cottage foods. And in addition, this is an opportunity for us to address something that's been ongoing for as long as I've really worked in Athens. We've had the question of home occupations operating outside of the main house in an accessory structure. Not in the yard, but in another structure. And so we've had many, many instances over the years where that has been a limiting factor for folks to be able to start a business at their home, was the ability to not operate out of a garage and that type of thing. So the text amendment that you have before you and the Planning Commission recommended unanimously for approval with the wording that you see on the screen is that the occupation shall be, and everything in yellow is new wording, shall be carried on entirely within the primary and/or accessory structure. When the occupation is carried on within the primary structure, meaning the main house, it shall be restricted to the habitable floor space and not occupy in excess of 25% of the habitable floor space within the structure, unless otherwise noted below. And then striking, the occupation shall be conducted entirely within the dwelling. That opens the door for accessory structures to serve as that opportunity for home occupation use. And then the strike through that you see in yellow below is to address the cottage food industry issue. And that's the recommendation that's before you.
All right, anybody want to make any jam? Commissioner Davenport?
So if I'm in a AR zone and I'm in a neighborhood and I'm growing strawberries, to preserve those strawberries, all of that has to be done within the confines of the accessory dwelling or the inside of the 25% of habitable space within the main structure.
If you're doing it today, it has to be within no more than 25% of your house. The text amendment here suggests that it would be possible to also have it, you could do your canning in an outbuilding on your property.
Okay.
Apologies, y'all, I failed to seek public input on this exciting change to our code. Any member of the public interested in weighing in? The spirit moves you. All right, we'll go back to commission comment.
I just have,
Commissioner
I think
Hammond?
I think it's a good thing. I'm glad we're doing it. I think it's going to, perhaps open some doors for some folks that may want to start a little small business and go from there.
Move those paintings out of the house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, they need to go somewhere.
Commissioner Taylor?
Bruce, can you kind of speak to, in the discussion, it says, one of the commissioners asked, how does this apply to short-term rentals?
Yeah, so, one of the things with our short-term rental regulations does slot home occupations as a short-term rental. And so what we explained was the wording for the short-term rentals would not be changing with this definition. The wording for how much, there isn't a 25% limitation when it relates to short-term rentals as a home occupation. The limitation for short-term rentals as a home occupation is you have to pick. Are you going to operate in an accessory structure or are you going to operate both? That isn't changing with this recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davenport?
One more, just the veterinary clinics. Can you explain that to the body?
That's the next one.
That's coming up in a minute.
Sorry.
I like the way you're thinking.
All right, anyone else on the jams, jellies, and brownies before we move on to the animals?
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on to the next one. Oh, yeah, John?
Is this just with the food industry, or is it for any business?
This would be for any home occupation. So, home-based businesses, online businesses, if somebody has a workshop, woodworking, there's a handful of things, one-chair beauty salons, that type of
It
thing.
has to take place in the building, like an auto repair place. I'm just thinking if they're gonna have a bunch of, cars out in the yard, it has to go in the building.
It's got to be operated within a structure, yes, sir. Yep.
And also, Bruce, with the, does this overrule the HOA covenants? Say if a neighborhood has a HOA covenant, does this home occupancy ordinance override the HOA covenant? Because some HOAs, you can't have business.
That's right.
So does this ordinance override the HOA covenant?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to vets.
All right. So in reviewing the code over time, but also very recently, we had some carryover language where veterinary clinics were being restricted in places that you might think they'd be otherwise fine. And that has been because veterinary clinics as an operation for a long time also included kenneling. Our use table has kenneling as a separate use. And so in recognition of that, we thought it was probably an opportunity for us to go back and revisit where vet clinics are allowed by right, where they're a special use and where they're not permitted. Similarly, take a look at kenneling. The kenneling function tends to be the thing that gets the complaints, whether it's the noise or the other things that come with having the pets there overnight. The vet clinic itself is something that tends not to need the same level of regulation. So what's being proposed here is to revisit vet clinics and kennels, and we have a handful of suggestions, but it really pivots on the fact that we're recommending, and Planning Commission supported this unanimously, to modify the use charts in the AR, the agricultural residential, the CD, the CO, and CN zones to allow vet clinics by right. Right now, they're not allowed by right. Since those zones are intended for office-type uses anyway, medical functions are already allowed in those zones. This would be something similar, with the exception of AR. AR is not allowed for medical complexes, but a vet clinic use makes sense in an AR context because you might be working with livestock, you might be working with other agricultural functions where that makes sense. Second thing, vet clinics that include a kennel, as I noted, would need to abide by the existing zoning regulations for kennels. So if a vet decided to have kenneling, from our interpretation of the code book, you're a kennel. Okay. So what we had was a recommendation for vet clinics, everything in yellow is what's changing. So to be permitted by right in AR, CD, CO, and CN, there would be still no special use approval for vet clinics in any zone, and they would not be permitted in single-family residential or the mixed-density residential. As far as kenneling goes, permitted by right in our AR, the EI, light industrial, and the institutional zones. Right now, those are special uses, and those would move to being by right. Special use approval would still be required for employment office for kenneling. And when you think about where employment office is, you can maybe make sense of that, like Ben Burton Circle. You've got some places where you have office functions where maybe having that kenneling use right next door wouldn't be a good fit. And then where it's not permitted at all, you have RS and RM, and then our neighborhood-based commercial, the CO and CN, and commercial downtown would not be permitted for kenneling. And that is it.
All right, take public input, and then we'll move to commissioners. Any public input on this text amendment? No interest in the brownies or the animals. Commissioner Davenport.
All right. So I try to give examples. So in Bar H neighborhood, it's AR. Someone can set up a veterinary clinic without a special use.
It's a commercial, so in the AR, could you have a veterinary clinic? Yes. I guess the answer to that is yes.
Yeah. So hopefully y'all understand what I'm saying. So like these are neighborhoods of 2 acres or 1 acre. They're spread apart. Some of these neighborhoods are quarter acre or whatnot lots. Somebody can essentially set up in the AR zone in these neighborhoods a veterinary clinic with kenneling.
Without a kennel.
No kennel.
Not a kennel, excuse me, yeah, well, veterinary clinic without the kennel. And so my question was, or is, what brought about the need for the change? Are we seeing a lot of veterinary clinics? Is that why the text amendment needs?
We've seen a handful, and there was one before this body recently on Oglethorpe that was a little bit of a head scratcher, and I think it revealed this inconsistency inside the code.
Commissioner Thornton.
So just to piggyback on Commissioner Davenport, I get the lot size, but the concerns or the complaints came more from kennels than the veterinarians, is that correct?
Yeah.
And if it's in an AR zone, kennels will not be a part of this?
Well, the kennels are, the way this text amendment is reading is kennels would be permitted in the AR. And following the line of discussion here, one thing that could be added to this, if you guys are thinking that this would be important, we do have a definition of AR neighborhood in our code that picks up places like Bar H, where it could be precluded from being in an AR neighborhood, and that way it avoids any conflicts like that. So that would move it towards the large lot properties that are not subdivided in a way for residential, primary residential function. Is that?
And so I guess the word, just, you clearly explained that. So I guess, does that need to be in writing somewhere?
Yes, if you feel like that's a solution, we can include that in here and turn that around and get it back out to everybody to see that in the text amendment.
Okay, Davenport, handle it.
Will do.
Okay.
Any others?
Yeah.
Commissioner Wright?
You had answered my question, now I've got another one. So you're saying if you go down to the second chart, you would just have, you already have the agricultural residential as a not permitted?
We have it as permitted by right.
By right. And you're saying you take that off
It
and
would
just have
stay.
AR, not
AR would
residential.
stay, but we would have a limitation on it that we also have in the code that would not allow for kenneling in AR neighborhoods
Okay,
by the definition we already have in code.
okay, so AR, okay, neighborhood versus residential is the difference you're talking about.
Yes.
And I do like when things come up like they did for that last request. It did seem interesting when you said this is just kind of in there. So I appreciate staff tidying things up and making it current. But like you say, until it comes up, you don't know.
Commissioner Hamby?
Yeah, I just have a question. I mean, I appreciate the suggestion. I'm just kind of wondering, did the planning commission bring it up, or why did planning staff not? I mean, when it gets to us, it should be ready to go.
That's a fair statement. I think the conversation was spent focusing on the CN and CO zones because that was the topic most recently. I think that's an oversight, in all honesty. But I think it's easily fixed.
All right.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I just did a quick search of AR neighborhood in the codes, and I noticed that the single family, the definition of a family ordinance, no more than two unrelated, applies also to AR neighborhoods, and perhaps that was where it came from. Because in our new zoning code, our future land use, you're proposing that to be a whole separate category of future land use, but
That's
that's
correct.
not there yet.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
No more than 2 unrelated college students or canines, so. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to relocate and we'll get on to old new business. All right, everyone, as noted, we're going to move on to old and new business. And so there are 4 items from consent that have been moved to new business. That's 1, 4, 6, or 8. So would anybody like to speak to 1, 4, 6, 8, or 13 through 19? If so, you can line up at the podium and we'd be glad to hear from you. Old or new business? Evening.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Andy Savoy. I'm with Core Spaces. We're at 1400 Kingsbury in Chicago, Illinois. I'm here to speak about item number 18 on the agenda, which is the development agreement to which Core Spaces would be a party. I've been working on that agreement for almost a year now with the ADDA, and I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that it's finally ready for your consideration. It has some notable public benefits to it. And so I wanted to come up here and just kind of restate those public benefits. Firstly, we'll be creating, we'll be doing some off-site improvements that would be necessary to basically create sewer capacity needed by our project. The amount of capacity we create would be far greater than what we actually use. So that's $2.8 million worth of costs that we would actually be funding as part of our project. That we do need, but it would create much more than we actually need and would allow other projects in town to move forward. We would be creating 425 public parking spaces within a new public parking deck. The project would generate roughly $7.8 million in affordable in lieu fees that could be used to create affordable housing offsite. We would create a series of public spaces, plazas, and playgrounds and encumber those with a public access easement. So there's actually almost 40,000 square feet of land that the public would actually have access to, including several plazas along Jackson and a plaza right in front of the Foundry building. That Foundry building would be protected by a historic facade easement, which it is currently not. And we'd be generating a substantial tax increment. Much of that would go into the TAD. So a lot of public benefit there. I came here to just say thank you for considering that item tonight, and I'm here. It's a long agreement, so I am here if you need me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savoy. Is there anyone else here tonight to speak to any item of old or new business? Good evening.
Thank you. I'm Michael McClendon, 201 Hamilton Road, Athens. I'm just curious, of the 6 of you who voted to approve this back in June, have actually read the 550 pages of this development proposal? I know that's a rhetorical question. This is 177 pages more than the Athens-Clarke County FY26 budget. When you actually read this, I'm reminded of an old saying that bad public policy, when it meets reality, does not achieve a good outcome. And this does not. There are fundamental issues in here that need to be addressed, ranging anywhere from it's going to increase the general fund budget requirement, it's going to decimate the use and operations of Lay Park, for example. This thing about 425 parking spaces, yes, you can count them, but when you read the document, they're already accounted for. And so where are people going to park when they come to vote and go visit Lay Park? And by the way, buses will no longer from schools be able to enter into Lay Park because of the way that they are positioning the parking deck. And also, it's going to cost more money to operate. And there are a whole bunch of other issues that I could go through, but the reality is, unless you have actually read this, and you've done some analysis and critical thinking, and asked a whole bunch of questions, you have no right to vote to approve this. This is a mess. It is a problem. And I challenge each and every one of you to actually print off 550 pages and sit down and actually read it. And then you will be in a position to have a conversation. So I don't want to hear somebody say, oh, well, it's got all these benefits. No, it doesn't. It's bad public policy for Athens-Clarke County. It's going to cost us money, and it's not going to deliver anything. And what you're essentially doing is changing Clarke County policy relative to student housing, which, by the way, there's no analysis that demonstrates there's a shortage of student housing in Athens-Clarke County. So I encourage you to pause, table this for months, because it will take you that long to actually read all of this and the stuff that's buried in here to understand the liabilities for Athens-Clarke County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClendon. Is there anyone else here to speak to any item of old or new business this evening?
David Ellison here to speak on item number 18 and ask that you please read these documents and recommend approval at the upcoming voting session. There are a number of benefits to the county as a result of this. Specifically, CORE is going to be paying $275,000 for a new playground, in addition to providing a public park on their own property to be maintained by the developer. What's unique about this particular project is that we are granting permanent easements for the benefit of the unified government that will run in perpetuity, will run with the land no matter what owns this particular development. And so the mural easement, historic facade easements, the public plaza easements, plus the public park easements, all must be granted to the unified government before any COs issue. The way this agreement is structured is intended to protect the unified government, to make sure that the Corps delivers everything it promises to do before it can get a CO on its own project. It has to get a CO for its own, has to get a CO on the parking deck before it gets a CO on its own project. Corps' obligations are secured by a payment bond and a performance bond. So if anything happens, there is security baked into this agreement to make sure that no matter what, there will be a parking deck. There are a number of other benefits in this agreement that I think that the Mayor and Commission should keep in mind. Specifically, there's over $820,000 that are projected to go to the East Downtown TAD annually every year until 2040. That is districts 2, 3, and 4. And so this is an excellent example of the density that your land use policies have encouraged. Not only is it going to be allowing for this payment in lieu for the housing fund, Not only is it going to be providing for $820,000 each year to the East Downtown TAD, but is going to be providing for sewer capacity, which this community needs. And it's also going to be offering below market rates leases to the DDA. So we believe that this is a great project for the community that provides a number of public benefits that has been vetted. We've been working on this for over a year. So I'd ask that you please vote to approve this project at this upcoming meeting in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Is there anyone else here tonight to speak to any item of old or new business? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to commission discussion, and we'll begin with item 1 that was pulled from the consent agenda for discussion. Commissioner Link, you asked for discussion of this.
Yeah, that's the pavement maintenance list. I have a couple questions about a couple of the streets, mostly having to do with upcoming construction and repainting. You know, this is the opportunity for some repainting of streets and to hopefully implement some traffic calming, which we saw on Rock Springs a few years ago. They added bike lanes and some street painting that was pretty successful in doing some traffic calming there. I have a question about Deering Extension, which is on the West Broad TSPLOST project, which we'll be voting on. I'm wondering if there is, and somebody can get back to me with this later, if there's intention to paint parking spaces there, because I know that can also help calm traffic when you have painted parking spaces. I have a question about 4th Street, if there's any opportunity for some street painting there that might help calm traffic or settle some of the parking issues on that street, because there are parking issues on that street. We have students who've moved into the neighborhood and a lot of on-street parking congestion. I'm wondering about potential for traffic calming or bike lanes on Hickory Street because of its proximity to the Greenway and bike lanes on East Broad Street. And also Minor Street. We're going to get a big roundabout there. A lot of construction is heading to that immediate area, and I'm wondering if it's kind of premature to do this repaving now or to wait till after that construction, because I would hate to see that brand-new paving get all messed up by equipment. I don't know what kind of construction easements we're looking at there. I have the same concerns about Newton Street. I wonder if some of the pavement needs were exacerbated by some of the construction. I think there was a big student housing complex constructed there fairly recently. I'm just wondering what our policy is when it comes to construction damage to our streets that would necessitate some of this repaving. So I know that's a big, long list of questions. I can write them out if you like, Bob. Someone could just kind of get back to me.
I know staff's taking notes, and Commissioner Link, would you just be satisfied with email response, given the particularities of each of those?
Yeah, and, you know, I just want to encourage my fellow commissioners to point out streets on here in their districts that could, you know, benefit from some striping in this repaving process.
All right, I've got Commissioner Hamby, then Commissioner Johnson.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Commissioner Lane, for bringing up those points. On the way here, I drove by Newton Street and was thinking the same thing, that there seems to be a big dip there that may have been caused by some of the construction utilities or something from that. And also the point about making sure no other activities going on. I remember last time we did this, we had previously voted a few months up before this or before then, and also in this case about putting speed tables down on some streets. And sure enough, they went and put the speed tables down on Stanton Way, and then a few months later they were having to repave Stanton Way because it was on the list. So I guess let's just make sure to double check the street list that we have and coincide with any extra work that may be done. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have questions related to, I'm going to start on page 1. So I'm looking at the revenues, and I have a question specifically about the $1.1 million in TSPLOST 2018 unallocated interest. Forgive me everybody here knows that I'm new, but I wasn't here for the vote. I was curious if this particular item, this interest that was suggested for this, was it voted on?
Yes, at budget time it was.
At budget time, okay, thank you. And then I was curious of the relationship of the $204,000 of the Public Utilities and Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. What role does Public Utilities have in the pavement management program?
So they look at projects where there's been water or sewer renovation where they might naturally have to be doing pavement repairs. And instead of investing in those repairs, they're contributing towards the otherwise needed repaving of the entire street.
Like Stonehenge, like there's, I think, a combination of that too.
I can't speak specifically
Okay.
to that site, but that's generally what they're working on. And-
Okay.
And part of that is to Commissioner Hamby's point, which is to make sure that we're not overlapping work.
All right, thank you. So there's a designated fund of future program funds. That's a very general line item and for half of the cost. What is that? And what is it? What is it? It's like a catch-all. What does it catch? That 5.4 million?
TSPLOST tiers that have not been achieved yet, they'll come in future budget cycles. So it could be conceptually 2026 funds. It's what's planned but not available.
I'm on page 1 still. Would it make sense to take it, I mean, why would we put it on the 23 request if, I understood everything you said and it makes sense, but why here? And why not wait until 26 agenda item? It's misleading. I'm just saying it's misleading. It's easily confusing to someone that doesn't study this.
We can be sure that's addressed in future
I
budget
mean, I
or
just think
future agenda
to keep it on
reports.
here, just to say, oh, it's just contingency, oh, it could be sub-project 1, sub-project 2. Anyone could say anything, and I just think it's not probably going to be used until 26. Why not take it off? It's inflating. There's the contingency last line of 1.738. I was curious of, I was reading my note, excuse me. Contingency, what percentage of the amount that was proposed in past years did the department use of that contingency that they asked for?
We'll have to follow up.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. And the determination of the contingency, I noted that it's 16.3%. If you could also kind of let me know where does it come from? How is it derived? And I'm moving on to page 2. My questions are, so this is a request to actually apply for a grant. And most departments just go ahead and apply and let us know later. So that's fine, but I noted that there's a 30% matching fund, and I was curious, where does that money come from? The $527,000?
So that match is coming from all of those other line items you see on the expense. It can be either our general fund capital or our TSPLOST. In this case, it's TSPLOST, and it's just a little more context is those are similar to entitlement funds where they're calculated by the amount of road miles and gas tax that's collected.
So are you saying it is it's in one of these line items? Are you saying it's in one of these line items on the front page, the $527,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I was just curious, under H, authorize mayor and appropriate staff to execute all related documents. Anything that uses like adverbs, like all related documents, makes me nervous. So can you give me an example of what is not included in here, like the documents that are listed in here? What are some additional documents that could be like a one-off that may happen, like a real-life scenario?
When we work with state and federal partners, they might have various exhibits that they require us to execute related to whether or not we participate in the Georgia security and immigration compliance or how we're reporting our funding. And so when they give us those extra gifts, having something like this, it's consistent with the contract, but it allows there's no ambiguity that the mayor or staff have the authority to sign it.
Thank you very much. How many staff members are assigned to the Pavement Management Division? I'm sorry, Andrew, I don't mean to make you squirm, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
3, okay. So there's a line, the statement says day-to-day operations. So is it more to oversee the contractor that is eventually hired?
Stephen Bailey from Transportation Public Works is going
Come on down.
to handle that one.
Yes, it is. So it's inspection staff and then people who are in charge of managing the contract.
Okay, thank you. Another question about the contractor. So I noted that there was, SPLOST 2023 was approved, and the very next month, there was, looks like an RFP for, just to get the process started. And then, I'm curious, there was the amount here, well, KCI Technologies was the winning bidder, and they provided all of the evaluation, the information you needed, and training, but did they execute any paving?
Did they execute anything?
Like, was there, like, paving? Like, there was?
No. So KCI does the ratings for our roads. So they're the ones that actually go out and map and do the scoring and then train us how to use that scoring system. So when you look at the list of all the roads that have a score from 0 to 100, they're the ones that went out and helped us to actually set those scores and then teach us how to use that system.
Okay, and there, the $464,100 for additional pavement management, like in your years of service in this Transportation and Public Works Department, what are some of the things that we don't know that come up that fit in that umbrella, $464,000?
So we do inspections at the end of a paving program to make sure that compaction's correct. We have testing services. It's also anytime you've got a SPLOST or a TSPLOST, you have that amount set aside for program management for SPLOST office. Also, our inspectors are paid for out of the capital funds, so their salary and benefit is part of that as well.
Okay. There's my last one here on number 14 on page 3. March 4th, 2025, there was a contractor, E.R. Snell. The pavement management project totaled almost $4 million.
Last year's program?
Yes, last year's. Can you go into detail why so expensive and comparing it to past projections?
So that's about on average with what we had been spending. Actually, I'd point out this year's a $10 million program that's coming up. So four is about right. And as you hear us say every year, we really should be spending closer to 8 or 9 at least. But $4 million last year actually got us a whole lot more paving than we expected because pricing was so low. So which is why we're really trying to spend as much as we can this year and take advantage of those lower rates as well.
Thank you so much. Sure. I appreciate your patience and your answers.
Absolutely.
Anyone else before I return to Commissioner Hamby? Commissioner Myers?
Just a question, actually, since Stephen is up there. Isn't there a process that's where you all look through the list of paving projects and for projects where there can be restriping and
or road diets?
Don't you do that automatically?
Yes.
I'm not sure if that may be in here somewhere, but I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, so we do that as staff, and then after this, we're also going to send it to the Athens in Motion Committee to look through as well for potential road diets as well. So yes.
Commissioner Thornton?
I said I wasn't going to, but Mike wanted to speak.
Go ahead.
Okay. I said I wasn't going to get into this conversation, but we did identify in one of our work sessions that the TSPLOST committees, and I'm just broadening it out. I know we were talking about striping, but about some projects that are duplicated as far as recommendations. And that is one of the things that I think that the county manager said he's going to have a process next month to cut some of that fat off, how we've been doing it. Am I correct?
Yeah, more associated with capital projects versus these paving projects. But inside the paving projects, a good example would be what you're talking about with kind of this consideration of striping and road diets and those kinds of things, is you have an adopted policy that says we try to pursue those where that's practical. So administratively, they're doing that. That would be an example if, rather than bringing every one of those projects back and saying, is it appropriate in this case? Is it appropriate in this other case? That's an example inside these, but the discussion we had at the retreat and that we'll have coming up is really tied more to the capital project delivery, which.
But I do want to make a point, though, that I know you're talking about capital, but the process should be very similar, that we don't have, we don't take up time and money and duplication.
Yeah,
That's where I'm trying to get
Yeah,
to.
and I think this is a good example of how that works fairly well,
Right.
because you've adopted as policy that we're going to do this pavement assessment. We contract for that. We've got adopted policy of kind of our target conditions, so all of that's done administratively. You've got then this issue of sort of complete streets or road diets is an administrative function. So all of those, the opposite of that would be to bring every street back and say, are you okay with this street concept, this street concept? And you've adopted a different system of doing that, which lets this move much faster than if you went that route. So yes, we're kind of talking about something similar to that on the capital side of things as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hamby?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what something Director Bailey mentioned about, previous years, we spent about $4 million, and this year we're spending $10 million on paving, which looks like it'll go a long way, so.
We thank you for voting to budget for that. Yeah.
Glad to.
So, can we put this back on consent, knowing that there are going to be some email responses to some of the specific street questions?
I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so one is back on
Just take it
consent.
back off.
All right, we're going to move on. Commissioner Johnson, you had a question about item 4.
Oh. Forgive me, I left my computer at home and I'm trying to remember what my
And that's
question
the
was.
waiver of water and wastewater fees for the
I looked it up
affordable
on my
housing.
phone. I looked it up on my phone, so I just have one question. Generally speaking, I wanted to confirm the exemption of the 30% of water and wastewater connection fee for the particular projects that provide the benefit. Would it apply to a project, could it have applied to like the Bethel Midtown Village project? Like anything like that, as long as it's providing affordable housing or job creation? A developer taking advantage of inclusionary zoning, it could apply to that. Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Thornton?
Since Commissioner Johnson opened the door there, and this is for primarily new housing, not existing housing, right? All right, so then my next question is, but don't we have a policy already on waivers for water? Nobody's shaking their head, so I must be wrong.
Well, there's a policy related to this opportunity to seek exemptions up to 30%. That is an adopted policy. It still requires you to take action associated with it. And as Commissioner Johnson said, it really falls into two possible categories. One deals with affordable housing, new housing, and the other deals with economic development. So yes, that was a policy that you put in place not that long ago because you didn't have a policy that allowed it all the way up to 100%.
And so I guess my thought is, and I think I've talked to the mayor about some water lines that were installed in my district somewhere, and families or households they had the opportunity to actually hook them up if they wanted to. Am I correct?
So over the course of quite a few years, really dating back around 2000 or maybe even a little bit prior to that, the county made an effort both for sort of human need sanitation as well as for fire suppression to make sure that there was fresh water available on every public street in the county. And of course, that means that sometimes you're passing a water line by a property that may have well water, and they're just accessing that happily for their water, but may at some point decide, hey, I would rather have public water, and so they've got the opportunity to tap on that at that point.
So this still is this still is new development, because I'm concerned, my ask is, if we, the policy that I read or glanced at was back in 2000, and I'm wondering why older neighborhoods and why would it just have to be for, especially if the pipes are already there? I'm not talking about installing new pipes. If the pipes are already there in that area, has there been any consideration for those houses
Yeah.
that are not new, if the pipes are already installed?
Probably not under this policy, but I think there have been both discussions and probably funding as well under, for example, CDBG programs to make those kind of connections. I think Commissioner Hamby actually mentioned in a conversation we had too that you might have actually even put in a recent budget approval tied with some of the water planning, that there might be funds in there for that. So it'd probably be, you probably would look at a different approach to doing that, to try to address those individual homes that might meet an income threshold and not be able to actually make that same connection.
I don't want to take up any more time, but if staff would put that in your notes to just give me a ballpark of what that could look like, and maybe an opportunity that we have right at our disposal, but just probably have not thought about using. So I'm not going to take up no more time. I'm just putting it out there, and if y'all would get back with me, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Anyone else on number 2? Everybody okay with that on consent?
Number 4.
Or 4, excuse me, 4 is what
I bet you.
4 okay on consent? All right, 4 is on consent. All right, Commissioner Link, you asked about the parking prohibition on Reese Street, which is item number 6 on the consent agenda.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the folks at Hill First Baptist Church have been reached out to make sure that they're aware of this. I can understand how there's a need to prohibit some parking. I know that there's been some renovation of a lot of the homes on that street recently, and it's obvious that more students have moved into the neighborhood, and this is one of those situations where you have older in-town neighborhoods with really narrow streets, small lots, and traditionally small homes with very little or often no on-site parking. And it's forcing folks to park on the street and making streets impassable, blocking driveways. I suspect that folks from the church do park on that street on Sundays and are having increasing problems parking there. I just want to make sure that they're aware ahead of time so they can alert their congregation.
I know Stephen Bailey is here. I note that this is the north side, kind of permitting continued parking on the south side. So.
Yeah.
That's right. We'll make sure that everybody is aware ahead of time. And I'm not sure who originally reached out for the parking request. I know it was a resident, and then ACCPD reached out as well and said that. So,
Yeah.
But we'll make sure that everybody on the street knows about it first.
Okay, Commissioner Wright, did they reach out through you at all?
I know Commissioner Wright and Commissioner Taylor both were interested in this. So Steve, you might want to hang on for a second. Commissioner Wright?
Yes, I had, it was Dexter Weaver's uncle, whose first name I forget, Dennis, maybe? Anyway, he's the one, I think, who emailed the evidence, so to speak. And my question for probably a future discussion is, the width is 20 feet. And I realize you guys need to observe the double parking. And it seems to me, just by the width, we could be making these improvements. I had another request to go in, but it wasn't seen. 2 cars parking there. And so it seems to me that just measuring the 20 feet and knowing that that's not enough would allow possibly even more of Reese or a road that's 20 feet wide.
I agree. There's room to revise that policy and make it easier, because right now, staff, the way that it's written is staff have to go out there 3 times to see if they even observe it. But as you said, we have to have 20 feet of width for a fire truck. If the road's only 20 feet wide, we know that there's going to be an issue.
Yeah. So maybe that's something, if we can update it so that we don't have to have this back and forth, or the math is showing you that the improvement needs to be made. And I do appreciate that it looks like the side that you picked was
counter to
side
the next, yeah.
allowing the people who don't have the driveways.
That's right.
'Cause I know you guys are paying attention to that, and I appreciate it. And I'm not sure that you guys want to be out on the weekend doing the checking on the both sides. So that would also allow these things to go through administratively without that. But I sure hope this gets back on consent. And do cards go out? Is that part of the outreach as far as?
I'll have to check with Tim. I know that
Commissioner
I think
Link
there's usually a flyer, and then we put the advance signage out there, but I'll ask him exactly how that works.
was saying? Yeah, okay.
Who wrote that
Thanks.
crazy policy?
Pardon?
Who wrote that crazy policy?
I know, it must be out, it's clearly nobody here.
That's Dirk Mayor Gertz's when he's commissioning.
Yeah, when there was a wild man in District 9.
Anyway, I appreciate y'all's work on that, and it will make it easier without it increasing speeding, I don't think. Anyway, thanks. I hope it goes back on consent.
Commissioner Taylor?
So, Saturday, or last Friday, when we spoke about the traffic coming with the speed bumps, so East Broad has speed bumps, but it also has the same issue as Reese Street.
With parking?
Mm-hmm. So like literally being blocked that the city bus can't
Sure.
get through. So would this be the type of measure, even though it has speed bumps? Because I know.
We can absolutely look at it. If you want to send an official request, and we'll take a look. And we right now, we're following that policy, going out 3 times and checking on it, but we can certainly do that.
And I'll check on it for you too. Take
pictures.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna help you out.
So we rely on 3 pieces of evidence. It's staff going out 3 times, pictures from residents, and then feedback from ACCPD. So yeah, any pictures or evidence helps. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and one more comment, Mark, the mailman is also a good contact to reach out to confirm when they can't get through, just saying.
It's the Mark the Mailman gauge.
Mark the mailman, and then.
It's shut down, and you giving the mailman more work.
The woman who does the mail in this area has some additional yellow curbing that needs to be done. I'll turn that into. Thanks.
All right, everybody okay with this on consent? Yes. All right, 6 is going to stay on consent. Finally, item 8 is a resolution to discontinue issuance of mobile home decals, no longer necessary by state law, and going to save, I think, $500 for the tax commissioner. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I just, for the public's sake, just an explanation of why we had these in the first place, what the funding goes to, or how much people were paying for it. I'm just curious of an explication of what the practice has been. And
Yeah, and the tax commissioner's not here today.
Would you like a follow-up, just a memo from the tax commissioner?
I mean, I'm just, like, was it an opt-in policy and now it's an opt-out?
No.
Or it was.
Yeah, it was
okay,
part
so
of state law that changed.
State law.
Yeah.
And now we
And it's
get to opt
probably-
out.
Yeah, and it's probably been on the books for quite some time, and probably over time, honestly, had lost its practical application, but hadn't come off of the books. Now that it's off of the books, that's why they're proposing to
So were
remove it.
folks, mobile home owners, they were required to purchase a decal every year?
Yeah, and it actually costs more to manage that program than it received.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So they won't be required to pay anymore, okay.
Any other
Yeah,
questions
it's
about that?
on consent.
Okay with that? All right. Beautiful. All right. Moving on to old business, of which we have 3 items. Item 15 is that intersection at West Broad and Hancock, and there were a set of neighborhood pedestrian improvements. I know Commissioner Link, you had a commission-defined option that just hadn't been in the public packet, and so this is an opportunity for everybody to take a look at that. So I'll turn it to you.
Yes, I hope everybody got a chance to look at it. We did have a really great public meeting, and staff was great, and we got some additional input from the public beyond the user group, and, some more specific direction on these projects. And hopefully we can start implementing them ASAP. We've got the TSPLOST money raring to go. I know Commissioner Davenport had a question about the V1, G3, P4, whatever, the little, those are codes that just identify the projects on the map Staff came up with those codes. I think P stands for pedestrian. They kind of used it as a code to identify the types of projects. If you look at the map right here, that shows you what they are.
Okay.
Shows you the location based on instead of writing out the whole name of the projects, they gave it a code. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some of these on the ground, especially in front of some of the construction that's going to happen around that big roundabout that's coming. Because I have a feeling we're going to get some cut-through traffic, at least during the construction phase.
Questions about this? All right, there's a commission-defined option, so it'll stay on discussion. Moving on to 14, this is the Hawthorne Oglethorpe Avenue intersection improvements for safety at one of our most dangerous intersections. Commissioner Fisher, you'd reached out to staff to make sure that they had engaged with the property owner.
Well, yes and no, Mayor. Found out that the store owner has obtained an attorney, and that's why I was not getting any response back. Didn't know that at the time, so I found out they had talked with the manager about it. So right now, there's an attorney involved. I'm not sure where we are as a government, what's going to happen as we move forward with this project. So I'm sort of stumped right now because I just don't know what's going to happen. So.
And I think we're pretty much in the same place we were when it came through, which is even though there is an attorney, the attorney hasn't been really responsive in kind of negotiations. And so certainly it would be staff's preference that we continue to proceed with eminent domain. We do owe Commissioner Fisher an apology because and staff's enthusiasm to respond to his request to get contact information, they negated to mention that they were represented by an attorney, which really should be obviously attorney speaking to attorney with it. But we're pretty much, as far as the project, in the same place that we've been, which is with both parties probably needing to proceed to go ahead and actually enact on the eminent domain provisions so that we can go ahead and proceed with the project. Now, starting that step may prompt some further communications with them, and we could certainly do that.
So I do have one. How much, and I didn't ask this, we was meeting the other day, how much of that property, how much land would be impacted? Do we know?
We
do. Anybody know that?
Yeah,
It's an illustration of the
scrolling
packet.
through, so, yeah, it's a fairly small amount, but
I looked and I didn't see.
Facts and Issues 22 has a table showing both temporary and permanent easement square footage that's needed.
Say that, I'm sorry.
Facts and Issues 22, which is on pages 9 and 10.
Okay, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, okay, I'm looking at 825 square foot. Is that correct?
Do you remember the address of?
Yeah, it's 795. I'm sorry. I'm looking at it right. It's 795. It's 675.
675 of permanent and additional 290 in temporary to create the backing slopes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Thornton.
Well, I do appreciate Bob acknowledging an apology to Commissioner Fisher. We are seeing this over and, well, we have seen it in the past, but that's a whole nother story. But my question is, now that we know that attorney has been involved, is our attorney involved?
yeah, the attorney's office has been involved. They just have not been responsive.
But our attorney is aware and moving, okay.
Yeah.
I don't want staff to think they're attorneys too. That's all I'm saying.
No. And that was part of the reason why we wanted to make certain that, that information should have been conveyed, because as a matter of practice and protocol, attorneys should speak with attorneys, or at least staff should be accompanied by attorneys as they speak to those. So, yeah. And in many cases, we use outside counsel to actually help in the acquisition of right-of-way and easements as well. So.
All right, moving on to item 15. This is the GOC report recommending updates to the board authorities and commissions procedures. You see this listed kind of at the front end of that report. Commissioner Davenport, anything you want to provide just as chair of GOC?
We had a meeting yesterday at 12, and we updated some scrivener's errors that were recommended and mentioned by Commissioner Myers. And what we have decided to do is make sure I have these dates right. We got a new clerk of commission coming in on the 6th to allow her to, the 9th, to allow her to review the recommendation, and then we're gonna have a meeting on the third Monday in November, and we'll be voting on this in December after the recommendations, any ideas that the clerk of commission may have, but I'll be asking, can we put this on hold till our December meeting? Only just to allow the new clerk of commission to provide input. But it has been up, I don't think our update from yesterday is updated in the packet, so,
No, I downloaded this weekend.
Okay, so, could staff send that out to everyone? All right, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. So as I read the history, it states in 22 that it was, this particular project was assigned to recommend updates. And one of the things I liked a lot was the $25 stipend. I think that's a very kind gesture. On page 2, number 11, enhanced transparency around the requirements for open meetings, open records, and streaming BAC meetings. So my concern is that there is no oversight. There's not one person or one person with any of the BACs that do that. And it's not been improved. We have BACs currently that do not post meetings or post videos or post minutes. And we have some that do a tremendous job of doing all three. So it's just inconsistent. And I would really, I know that's not what your charge was, but Mayor, I'm curious if you would be open to including a review of that down the line of the consistency, because too many inconsistencies leads to violations of the Georgia Open Meetings Act, Open Records Act, stuff like that. And this is preventable, the inconsistencies. I definitely agree with F, a process for BAC member removal. There are a lot of committees, steering committees or whatnot that are temporary, but they're still established, they still meet, they still hold public meetings, and half the board shows up. And so it's the same people making the same decisions. In the communication as it relates to the website, social media, visual identity, I just would like accountability, to see more accountability. I want to state for the record, I disagree with before I disagree, I want to understand the rationale for the consolidation of the 6 TAD allocation district committees.
Do you want to speak to that, Commissioner?
Okay, so the first part when, so the first thing that you had mentioned, we had corrected when it comes to posting on the minutes. So we are going to follow state code and make sure that the meeting minutes are posted. When it comes to the consolidation of the 6 TADs, we saw redundancy in efforts, and our train of thought was to be, if we, instead of having staff and commissioners elect all these individuals, combine them together and have us to elect one member for that body, just for consistency. Hopefully I said that right.
I can share on that point. I've engaged with lots of mayors and managers, and by lots, let me say at least half a dozen who have either tax allocation districts or tax increment financing programs, and to a city, they all have a single body rather than multiple bodies for each district.
It's more efficient.
Commissioner Johnson, any other?
I'm sorry, it came back to me. I apologize. Okay, so, make sure there's not one more. That's it, thanks.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, it's my understanding when it comes to consolidating the TAD committees, most of these committees have done the lion's share of their work in making those recommendations on the kinds of projects that they would like the TAD money to go to, which that could be unique to each district, but when it comes to like the oversight and implementation, it moves on to us and having that citizen body just kind of do that final oversight. That's my understanding, that, you know, the need for separate committees on the front end was a thing, but it might not be as much now.
I do have one more, actually.
I'll circle back.
Thank you.
I've got Commissioner Thornton.
I would like, I'm going to put my suggestions or my concerns about the task in writing. I think that's the best way for you to answer me and me not to give the wrong perception to our constituents and those that are looking. But I will say this. I think as a government, if I had to do the tasks all over with the limited knowledge that we all had, I would scratch it. We take on these big picture ideas, and we kind of fundle through the dark instead of. So I'm gonna put my concerns in writing, because like I said, I don't want to offend nobody and I don't want to embarrass nobody, but we asked people to do something that we didn't know what we were doing. So I will definitely follow back up in writing, okay?
I knew what I was doing.
Well, that'd be one time in life.
Anyone else before I return to Commissioner Johnson? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. I wanted to ask this question. First, I love the conflicts of interest template, the document. Excellent. That's accountability all the way. So my question is, was there any consideration to add the temporary committees, like the Future Land Use Steering Committee, under the BACs, but under a header called temporary? Because it's still a stamp in time. So when you think about it, the Future Land Use Steering Committee started meeting last April 2024. But if you look at the county website, which I did last night, it only shows 4 meetings that started that started in October. So it's a little misleading, but would there be consideration for the temporary ones just to solve a problem, solve an issue, under the heading of temporary? And 2, the conflicts of interest, there are individuals that serve on different boards and different temporary committees. Did you guys discuss that?
So, Future Land Use Steering, you created that.
That was created by recommendation of the planning department, and then we basically appointed those kind of for the limited duration of that activity.
So we didn't, so we'll have to think about that one.
No, I understand. It wasn't a part of your charge. I was just curious, but thank you.
Well, one note is the charter speaks specifically to the authority and powers of the mayor to establish committees. And so items like the Future Land Use Committee, the current SPLOST and TSPLOST committees, the Athens Justice and Memory Project Committee, those are all mayor-appointed committees. They serve at the discretion of the mayor, at the appointment by the mayor, and until the mayor says their work is done. So there are some nuanced things about the mayor's kind of jurisdictional power, if you will. But my understanding is that they should, and we do try to flag this now, that they should adhere and are required by law to adhere to open records and open meetings, including things like quorums. So there would be some of this that would apply directly, even if it wasn't. I believe in GOC, it was recognized that that was somewhat beyond the scope of their task, was to kind of get into the nuances of mayor committee assignments.
I did mention several times I want to stop the mayor from creating these committees.
Commissioner Thornton.
And I guess that's a real good example of when I say we don't know what we're doing sometimes, some of us. The charter is supposed to be the foundation. And every time I bring up having just to review the charter, I can't move, it doesn't move. It doesn't move. That charter is our foundation. When we take the oath, to be sworn in, we swear on the charter. And half of us, I'm guilty. I'm just starting to read it myself, okay? So I'm guilty. But I think there are things in the charter that that needs to be changed. I think the charter should guide what we do. And if we're not going to abide by the charter, then let's just say that. But I have, since 2023, have been, and I'm asked again at the next meeting to put the charter on a work session. Let you tell me no again, and go from there. But we keep coming up with all these nuances, and this group, this city's doing that and that, and it doesn't align with our charter. So I'm going to ask again, this was a perfect time for me to go public, that the charter needs to be reviewed. And it not only needs to be reviewed, it needs to be revised. And Mayor, if you would tell me, when was the last time we did a charter revision? Is that those oversight committees?
So once a decade now, there's a charter oversight commission. And then we've also made some modest changes in the charter, some of which we're able to do by state home rule law. A good example was being a little bit more explicit about our ability to fund needs for indigent residents in the midst of the pandemic. That was a modification that we made a few years ago.
I still think that we need to take a retreat on the charter, and that will help fix all these things where we're like, it looks like we're just patching, putting a patch here, let's go to the root of the situation and go from there. But I will bring it back up again, and I hope other commissioners understand. That charter is less pages than the core document, but it's a lot, okay? It's less than 400 pages. So I don't think that's no big deal for us to sit down unless some folk benefit from the charter and others don't, and you don't want to deal with it. But I'm gonna bring it back up again as a work session item.
It's about a dozen pages.
Yeah, it's not that big.
Commissioner
It's not that
Hamby?
big.
Yeah, all right.
I would support that also. I think I've had one-on-one conversations with at least half of the commissioners who also say the same thing. I think it's just finding the time to do it and make it that the priority. But I think there's a lot of support for that, Commissioner Thornton.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move on to item 16 in new business. This is charm contingency funding. Any questions about this one? Or any interest in putting this on consent?
Consent.
All right, 16, consent. All right, 17 is a memorandum of understanding with the Board of Regents regarding the cooperative extension. This is just a minor modifications.
Consent.
Consent.
All right, 17, consent. All right, 18 is the development agreement for the redevelopment of public and private properties around 295 East Dougherty Street. And just want to begin turning it over to Manager Cowell just for an overview of the primary components of this development agreement.
Yeah, and I'll try to be as quick as I can and try not to be, well, I guess I'll apologize for being repetitive because actually some folks have already spoken on some of these items, but I think it's worth highlighting again. I want to start first with sort of a kind of setting the context of what this agenda item actually is about. And so the purpose of the agenda item is to formalize and offer greater detail of what was previously approved in the June meeting. So you'll remember there was an IGA approved, an amendment to it in June, and in that it spelled out the general parameters of the project itself. And this development agreement that and its other components are really to take that fairly general language and add 500 pages of specificity to it as well. Since that June meeting, staff, and I, at this point, want to acknowledge the work that Andrew and the attorney's office have done with outside counsel, with the development team and others, have been working pretty nonstop on trying to formulate what ultimately became the 500-plus pages that you all have, and that included negotiating those terms. And for me, most importantly, completing all of the documents. And so it was really important for us to make sure, and I realize it's a bit shocking to see 500 and something pages. Part of the reason you're seeing that is because everything is there. It's not, here's a piece of that agreement, and we'll come back a little bit later with another piece of that agreement. It was really important that we give you the full set of what's in that, that agreement. It is a complex project, and as you all have already seen, it's a complex document as well. That was one of the reasons why more than half of you, we've had one-on-one conversations with to kind of walk through these points to give a little more detail to them, and would continue to extend that offer, that certainly between now and November, or even any time after that. If there are items on there that you want to talk in more depth or detail, certainly happy to do that as well. And again, so our charge really was to take what was agreed to in June and formalize it. That's what our focus has been, and that's what the focus is still going forward. So I'm going to try to cover the high points of the terms of the agreement, again, very quickly, and then certainly between myself, Andrew, Judd, and others, we can hopefully answer any detailed questions you might have, or at least take stock of those and be prepared to come back with further discussions regarding those. I'm not taking these in any particular order, although those of you who have gone through kind of the one-on-one will recognize the order, because it's the same order we talked about. So I'm going to start with the sewer improvements. And so the development agreement includes language that requires about $2.5 million worth of public sewer improvements, which essentially, when you look at the document, is essentially taking an existing line and resetting that line so that the capacity actually increases because of the slope of that particular line, along with some other improvements to get sewer service, expanded sewer service to this particular project with it. Again, that was a $2.5 million, or is estimated to be a $2.5 million improvement. It does come, the IGA included the acceptance of that 30% waiver in recognition that this opened up other areas of downtown for further economic development activity. So that is estimated to be worth about $702,000. So if you take the $2.5 million and subtract the $702,000, that gives you a sense of what the expense is that's associated with that being borne by the developer. The other benefit that they get is to ensure that the capacity they need for this project is, if you will, reserved, that they're doing this work, obviously, to get sewer service to this particular property. There is there are two required rezonings associated with this property also. Those are not subject to the decision you would be making on the development agreement. Those two rezonings still have to run their course, meaning they still have to go to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission still has to conduct its hearings. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation to you, and they'll come back here for public hearing as well. And you retain all the same discretion you would in any other rezoning. What the item does do is it actually, by resolution, initiates the rezoning process. The significance of that is twofold. One is it names ADDA as the agent, so it lets them carry the rezonings forward. And the other is it shortens the time period that staff has to review the particular project. The reason being is staff has been reviewing this project for months as it's working its way through. But again, does not shorten or change the official process associated with any other rezoning that you have seen in any other instance as well with those. The inclusionary zoning component, I think, has been talked about a little bit. This project does propose use of the payment in lieu option with the inclusionary zoning, and it's projected that may contribute up to $7.8 million into the Affordable Housing Fund. It would be divided equally. $3.9 million reserved for specific census tracts, which I'll come back to in just a second, and $3.9 million which would be reserved for funding, gap financing funding for future LIHTC projects. The two census tracts, you will remember a discussion actually at the last meeting that there was acknowledgement that the census tracts that were in the CDO that actually accompanied previous approvals were the wrong census tracts. They were identified as being over in East Athens County. So think of East Clarke County. So think of the Winterville area and the Morton Road area. And I think everyone agreed the intent was that there would be East Athens areas. And so the item that you have when you choose to act on it includes the correction of that also, so that it identifies the correct census tracts.
That was my fault. Sorry.
I wasn't going to say that.
We
all knew.
Blame
But
me.
it will be corrected, because that was certainly the intent, was that's where those
Scrivener's
dollars
error.
would go. The benefit to, the benefit that goes to the developer is like any other developer that uses the inclusionary zoning, which is an increase in density, a reduction in required parking, and a reduction in the ground floor non-residential or commercial spaces that would be there as well. You'll recall that there was quite a bit of discussion when this item came through the first time relative to the park playground. The playground, of course, right now is up in the intersection at the far corner of this property. The IGA required that that playground be replaced at the cost of the developer. The proposal is actually will result ultimately in 2 playgrounds. And so let me kind of sort of explain those 2 playgrounds. So essentially where the current playground is, the proposal is another playground would be placed back in that location on a smaller footprint. So it's a smaller playground with potentially less equipment in that area. That came about as a result of the developers' conversations with the immediate surrounding community, the neighborhood there, and the feeling that there was a need to continue to have a playground in that specific location. That playground will be privately owned and maintained, but have a public easement on it, meaning anyone in the public has the opportunity to use that playground. I think during the discussions, while staff appreciated the placement of that playground and understood the reasoning for it, we did not believe that it alone met the objectives of the IGA. And so they will also be by agreement contributing the value of the equipment of the playground that is on that property right now, which is $275,000. So in addition to building this playground, they will be providing $275,000 to ACC Gov for the construction of another playground, which will actually be up on the park, up in the area near the tennis court, swimming pool kind of area. Now, a catch to that is, if you will, we don't want to replace the same playground that was there. We want to actually replace it with a comparable playground that you might see in some of our newer playgrounds, which is more expensive than what we had there. And so that's why you see the language in the agreement that there will be other dollars required to match the developer's $275,000 to actually deliver the playground that Leisure Services deems or really feels is appropriate for this area. So at the end, if all goes according to how we hope that it will, when this project opens up, there'll be a playground on their property, open to the public, maintained by them, and there will be another playground of a higher size and quality up located on the Lake Park property. And I'll come back to sort of the parking aspects of that when I get into the parking discussion with it. Kind of a minor item, but still important. You'll know that all of us that go through there right now kind of consider Hoyt Street as a street running through the property. In reality, parts of it are not a street. Parts of it are effectively a driveway crossing private property. There is a requirement that not only does Hoyt Street in this project get constructed to street standards, that there be a dedication of a public easement across that property. Often we would see a dedication of right-of-way, meaning we own the land underneath the street. In this case, the easement simply gives us the right to have the street there and continue to operate it as a street would need to be. But because we don't know, as this project kind of actually comes out of the ground and starts being operated, whether it might make sense to have that as right-of-way. So under this agreement, we've retained a period of time, I think it's 3 years, where we can acquire that right-of-way for $1. So that piece is there, should we choose to exercise that provision. The Hoyt House, which of course sits kind of in the middle of this property, the IGA required that the house be relocated at the cost of the developer. In conversations with Historic Athens, there is an interest in their participation in that. There's a couple of different options. So what has been settled definitively is it needs to be relocated at the cost of the developer. What has not been settled definitively is where. Some of the options that we've talked before with some of you about is it could go on property owned by ACC Gov, that property being property located in front of the health department on Hancock. It could go to a property that is otherwise owned by a private entity that Historic Athens identifies and is located there. It could also be relocated to other ACC Gov property and turned into a public use for that. Andrew lobbies very strongly against that one because, as Andrew says, we own a lot of buildings already that
Yeah,
are
I-
old and we don't know
I
what to do
agree.
with. But it's an option that exists. And there is always the option that if for some reason, as we go through this process, that no one can find ultimately a place to put this, you could modify those requirements. But right now, the requirement is that it be relocated at the cost of the developer. Jackson Street, most of you will recall that there is a SPLOST project for the Jackson Street Art Walk, which effectively runs from Broad Street through this property up to its intersection at Hoyt and Jackson. That project is a $3.2 million funded project, but not yet designed project. There is about $600,000 expected in, I think, this fiscal year, and the remainder in the next fiscal year with it. So the idea and the envision in the IGA was how could this project accommodate what is envisioned in the Jackson Street Art Walk, even though there's no design with it. The way this project does that is along Jackson Street, there are a series of plazas that are on their property, private property, but they have a public easement on them so that effectively they would become like another park in each of those areas so that as the art walk is designed and constructed, there are ways to integrate these plazas into that piece. If there was a desire to actually place any kind of art, public art on the property or acquire a piece of land, there would have to be subsequent conversations about purchasing that property. But as far as its integration with the art walk, that's built in. The IGA also required there be a mural, so basically one of the walls being dedicated via an easement to be able to accommodate a mural. The IGA spelled out 1,000 square feet, and that's what's been granted in this agreement. The artwork will be decided at a later date by you all or by some other body, depending on how we move forward with it. The developer does retain the right to be able to say if it's something that conflicts with their project, that they have the ability to object to what that art is. I don't know what that would be, but that option does certainly exist with it. The rest of the art walk, though, is really a separate project. This just sets the stage to try to integrate those two as they kind of work their way through. The parking deck, so I'll move to it. So the parking deck is envisioned to be constructed and managed by ADDA, and it is a 425 space deck, which would it has somewhere around $16-17 million estimated cost for that. The equivalent cost of 200 spaces would actually be borne by the developer. The other part would come through a loan, a 5% interest loan that's provided by the developer to ADDA for a 15-year period. There would be no prepayment penalty, so if the garage performs better than anticipated or other monies or refinancing, whatever those might be, the loan could be paid off earlier. The deck itself, based under the scenarios that have been modeled financially, does not pay the debt that is owed on this particular garage. So there has to be another source of revenue in order to make that happen. The other source of revenue that's envisioned is the Washington Street garage, which currently has debt that both ADDA and AC.Gov are contributing to, comes off, if you will. That debt is retired in 26 as well. And that dollar amount dedicated over to this project, combined with the anticipated revenue from this project, is believed to be adequate to actually carry the note for the full 15-year period. Having said that, we are backing that commitment so that if the garage does not perform as expected, there would be funds that would need to be contributed to that piece. Right now, the model indicates that it will work, but certainly want you to be aware of that. One of the ways that it will work is this is a garage which, unlike the other garages that are managed by ADDA, it's fully expected, will actually offer a significant number of longer term, so monthly parking leases, if you will, at a higher rate than we might find in other instances. There will still be the opportunity, but it will be fairly limited for hourly parking. It's a fairly remote garage, so it's not really anticipated there's going to be a tremendous amount of hourly parking. But certainly you may have that on game day and some other kinds of activities. But the bulk of the revenue coming from this will come from students that are living in this project and adjacent projects who are leasing spaces in this particular garage. There are no dedicated spaces in this garage for anybody. The developer doesn't get to reserve spaces in the garage. It is actually, everyone will need to lease spaces through or buy hourly rates through the ADDA. One exception to that is parking is being removed with this project from the park. So obviously next to the playground, there's a parking lot also where folks park to be able to take advantage of the playground as well as go to the recreation center. By agreement, by the development agreement, there are 50 dedicated spaces in the parking deck, which will offer up to 3 hours of free parking for those and that gives the opportunity for those that would use the playground and or staff that actually is working at the recreation center. That's inclusive. That excludes also some, but not much, on-street parking in the area also. The idea is, though, with that 3 hour free parking, someone who was coming to the playground would still have access to free parking in the parking garage to the playground. The deck includes on the third level. The third level, there is a bridge that will cross Hoyt from the deck over to the playground so that it will be an accessible route. So if someone used the garage that was pushing a stroller or needed a wheelchair or was otherwise in need of an accessible route, that will exist. That's being paid for by the developer and will leave the deck over to the location of the new playground. Some of those costs that were identified with the playground include extending the pathway from where that bridge ends over to where the playground is. And we may even choose, it may make sense to extend that on over to the Linden House. There may be other reasons why you would want to extend that walkway beyond that as well. There is no question, and we've shared this with you all as we've met with, there's no question that the experience of the user at the recreation center will be very different than it is today. Today, if you've got summer camp, you may drive right up in front of the building and wait to pick up children or drop off children or whatever it may be. That will be very difficult to do under this scenario because, again, much of what was an underutilized street will become a very heavily used street, and much of what was parking will now become part of this development, absent those 50 spaces. It will therefore require our staff to actually do more management of those events so that folks can come and go, so that buses can come and go. We've also considered looking at the back parking area in Linden and perhaps using that as a way in which to access into the center. But again, don't want to leave any impressions that it's going to operate exactly the same way that it has been, because it won't, as you go about using the facility with it as well. The same will be true too, that, if you go out there right now, obviously what you look out over, if you're up at the recreation center or at the art center, you're looking out over a couple of empty parking lots and off to the skyline of downtown. This is a large urban project, and so what you will be looking at from those areas is into this project. So into these buildings, into the plazas, into the plaza that runs in front of the foundry that was mentioned. So it's going to look very different than what it does currently. It'll look very urban. There is, as was mentioned, a historic preservation facade or a historic facade easement on the foundry, meaning the exterior of the foundry cannot be altered from its historic character. The inside does not have any limits attached to it. That will be up to them as to what to do with it. And then I think the last piece I have is, let me give you one more piece than the last piece. On the Jackson Street side, part of the agreement is that there are to be I think it's up to 5,000 square feet of retail space made available to ADDA at a reduced rate. And the intent was, if you remember from the IGA, to create an opportunity where, whether it be for art studios, art galleries, some other kind of business opportunity, that ADDA could offer to someone a lower cost entry point to be able to be in this development versus what it might cost to be elsewhere in downtown. They have a period of time by which to exercise that option with the developer. And they could enter into a lease agreement at that point that's not limited by the 2 to 3 years that are in the agreement. They just have, is it 2 years they have to act? 3 years they have to act on that opportunity. If the 3 years pass, that opportunity may not, 2 years, sorry. That opportunity may not exist after that period of time. Last thing I have to say, I think, and then we'll open it up to whatever questions you all might have. It was asked of the tax assessor to give us a sense, and it is just an estimate, of what the revenues may be generated from the tax revenue from the project. One of the reasons for that is because the TAD plays a significant role in this, and we wanted to get a pretty good sense of what that is. Today, these properties, which include the municipally owned properties and the privately owned properties, are valued at somewhere around $24 million. It is estimated when you look at the land values of similarly positioned properties in downtown and the building values of similarly located properties in downtown, it is estimated that that value will go up to at least $175 million. So from 24 million to 175 million. And the taxes generated from that, and this is a snapshot, so this is sort of an estimate of what that first year tax revenue could look like. Obviously, as values increase and change, this would change as well. It would, a combined annual tax of about $2.2 million, slightly more than $2.2 million. And I'll show you how that is broken down. A pretty nominal amount coming to ACC Gov General Fund, only about $33,000. And the reason for that is because all of the new value, the incremental value, is captured by the TAD. And so about $820,000 is estimated to be generated annually for the TAD, and by CDO, all of those funds go, if you will, across the river. So that's where those projects would reside. There is a $1.3 million annual tax contribution to the school district. You could certainly probably project that very, very few students are likely to be in the schools from this project. So those are likely revenues that they're receiving without a lot of probably increase in service demand with it. And then there's $70,000 that would go to the downtown tax district, to ADDA, because this is in the downtown tax district where there's the additional millage attached to that. So again, about $2.2 million is what is anticipated to be kind of that first year sort of tax revenue with it. There are a number of smaller points of things like right-of-ways that need to be abandoned, easements that need to be added, and those kinds of things, but those are really fairly minor items compared to those larger deal points, and are included in the many, many pages of information that are out there. So that's as quick as I can do, kind of the big touch points with it as well. And again, certainly Andrew and Judd are able to answer the detailed questions that they've been working on for the last couple of months on this as well. So,
Bob, thanks for outlining those broad parameters. I think that's helpful for the public and everybody just to know what the cornerstones are of this, that to some degree has been underway since the DDA entered into an IGA with the unified government in 2020, for the purpose of a public parking deck, which was kind of our entry point into the conversation. So any questions? Yeah. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. And Bob, thank you for that. And I had some time to spend with you yesterday, and I'm just, for me, first of all, Mayor, I think we need to pull this. To the gentleman from CORE, they said they spent a year, putting all this together, and we're asking this body to make a decision in November. And I think we owe it to our public, we owe it to this body to make sure what we're getting into, because there are some things that wasn't said. And again, I have not read the whole document. I got it right here. Haven't read the whole document, but I did see some things in there that possibly may have to do some bond issues that might be involved in some this financing that we may have to do with the playground. I know we have to get approval from HUD in order to move that. That wasn't mentioned. So I think it's too many moving parts for us to sort of make a decision on this in November. So I'm gonna recommend that we pull this, do a work session for this body to really ask the question. I appreciate my colleague, Carol Myers. She had a number of questions that she sent and shared with us today, and thank you, Carol, for that. And to ask us to make a decision in November is not fair. And so I'm gonna recommend we do a work session. We can either wait in the November cycle or December before we make a really decision how we want to move forward. So that's
I know Commissioner Fisher asked the question of any bonded indebtedness. Is there any bonded indebtedness associated with this?
There is none envisioned with this piece. And also to clarify, and I can only partially clarify this regarding the discussion whether there was there is a need to involve HUD or anything. Right now, we do not believe that's the case. Doesn't mean we've exhausted all of the research with that, but right now, we don't have any reason to believe that. But
Yeah.
Thanks, Attorney Drake.
Restriction on portion of notified lot dating from the urban renewal program from the 1970s that prohibits the transfer unless HUD approves. That particular program, we've learned, has been discontinued, and HUD has been indicated they released their covenant. And so we've been in communication with HUD for months to keep them informed of the project, and they've given preliminary approval of the release that we have prepared. And I will clarify, this is David Ellison, who spoke earlier, who has been riding sheep herd over this. But also then we got a follow-up email from the HUD person responsible for it saying that they believe that once the development agreement is approved, that should be enough for them to grant the release.
So there's nothing in, again, unless I missed something, I just thought there was something, and maybe I need to go back and maybe I read it wrong.
You're not incorrect. It's just that program's been
Not
discontinued.
about the HUD deal.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah, the HUD.
But bonded
That's what I'm
indebtedness
talking
is what you were
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to think about.
bonded indebtedness.
Oh, yeah, there's
I'm talking about
there's
the
no
bond.
bond indebtedness that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So there is $8.1 million maximum loan that would go to ADDA. Because that is backed through an intergovernmental agreement, it would be reported in our portfolio of debt, just like you currently see other things. So for example, right now, on page 331 of your FY26 budget, there is a $6.1 million loan for the Washington Street parking deck. That loan is actually, that debt was bonded indebtedness. It was bonded by ADDA, but because the unified government backstops it, we report it.
Okay.
So functionally, we will report it, but it will not be a bond issued by ACC Gov, nor will it be a bond issued by ADDA.
But it is debt. I mean,
I
so,
Can I
There's
clarify
a
something about
confusion.
that?
Maybe
but it's
that's
not,
confusion.
it's not bonded indebtedness, but it's still debt.
Okay, maybe that was confusion for me. So,
That comes
Thank
out
you.
of all parking revenues to be paid for. It doesn't come out of any property tax or general fund. It comes out of parking deck or parking fees that are received from downtown.
Yeah, the anticipation is that we move the funds that the parking system pays toward the Washington Street indebtedness over to this, given that that comes off the books and is concluded in 2026.
Right, and that is how this is envisioned. If it performs as is anticipated, it would all come from proceeds of parking. Now, what you are, and we've shared this with you all as we met, what you are, if you will, foregoing is if you didn't dedicate the dollars that are with the Washington Park to this project, when the debt came off, then the proceeds that come from that garage would be divided per your parking agreement, which is 40% going to ADDA and then 60% coming to us. So that's a piece that is, we don't earn that now. That would be a piece you would earn if you didn't move these
This project
dollars
wasn't
to pay for
contemplated.
another. Yeah. But then you couldn't build obviously the parking deck couldn't get built.
Got Commissioner Link.
Yeah, so this is my district, and I've been in discussion with the ADDA and the developer about this since late last year. And I want to thank them for involving me in the discussion and for being really, really open to basically my demands when it came to seeing that we did have a project that had tremendous public benefit. I only wish that we could have seen these kind of benefits from the dozens of other large-scale student housing projects that have come to this community. And in my mind, a project like this is why the ADDA exists. Every community out there has some kind of downtown development authority, and it is their charge to engage in projects like this. And because we have a TAD, we have the potential for even more community benefit going directly to neighborhoods that have not seen the benefit for so long. I have one quick question for the manager, maybe for the developer. How many bedrooms are in this project? Approximately.
I would actually ask that the developer come ask that
Yeah.
because it's proposed to develop by right.
The development team.
So roughly 1,400 bedrooms?
1,400 bedrooms.
That's correct, which is the by right.
Okay.
amount.
That is
Yeah.
1,400 students that will not be seeking to live in our in-town neighborhoods that are already tremendously overtaxed. I mean, we've had conversations just now about the parking issues on our streets, the crowding on our streets, the way that those students seeking to live in those neighborhoods is driving up the cost of living in those neighborhoods. They're charging $1,000 a bedroom. Families can't afford that. So, every bedroom we build in a project like this that is not adjacent directly to a neighborhood, that has its parking on site, is gonna loosen up the issues in our neighborhoods. It's gonna draw those students out of our neighborhoods, hopefully bring the cost of living down in those neighborhoods, affordable housing down in those neighborhoods. Market studies say that, the law of supply and demand helps bring the cost of housing down. And, that's not even mentioned in this 500 pages of agreement. The bulk of those 500 pages are schematic drawings and easement agreements and appraisals, legal documents that involved dozens of pages. When I bought my house, I had a document that was this thick for my puny little house, a single property. I'm not concerned about the 500 pages. They make sense when you understand that there are dozens of different properties and easement agreements engaged in this whole project. Yes, it's huge and it's urban, and I'm not a huge fan of, the idea of all these mid-rise, high-rise projects coming to our downtown. This is on the edge of downtown. I would hate to see something like this smack in the middle of downtown. But the student housing issue is not going away, and we're getting a tremendous amount of public benefits out of this and a tremendous amount of money flowing back into this community. And I really think it's a best case scenario. I appreciate the design that they put into it as far as the way it engages the street front. They're going above and beyond many of our design guideline requirements when it comes to green spaces and trees, the connectivity to the park, accommodating the parking for the park. So I'm eager to support it, and I do want to thank the development team and the ADDA for involving me in this in the early stages, because it is my district. And it is a real estate deal, and there's a lot of discretion required in real estate deals. And if this project doesn't get made, I can guarantee you there'll be other developers lining up to take control of the property who will not be so willing to work with us.
Commissioner Thornton.
I think this is a very good project. I would have supported it if there were some other things that, like knowing about it, is probably the biggest. And I know I'm supposed to direct my conversation to the mayor and not to my fellow commissioners. So, Mayor, I don't know how Commissioner Link thinks she's so thankful that staff invited her to be a part of this conversation. She is the commissioner. She should have been invited. That should be a no-brainer. That's the first thing. I appreciate, Mayor, that Commissioner Link's demands are in this project, that she made these demands and they're in this project. But maybe she should also have demanded that the rest of the commissioners knew about this. No, don't.
Commissioner Thornton. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, I do think the devil is in the details. I do think, because even when we're talking about now putting, creating one TAD, creating, because we didn't know what the details were. We didn't know all the ins and outs. It behooves us, whichever way we vote, and I'm not saying vote for or against, but we understand, because we don't want to come back 2 years from now and say, oh, we didn't know this, or we didn't figure out that. So I hope that Commissioner Fisher does follow up with his suggestion. But now I did have a question. It was said that the federal government about the playground, once they get the intergovernment agreement, they would be willing to move forward.
It was actually the attorney that had those details. My focus was on actually the playground piece,
Okay.
not the overall land transaction and stuff, but.
So, and I think there was a piece about the rezoning. Here we go, again, it looks like we're putting the horse before the cart. It looks like we should get the rezoning stuff out the way and then work towards the intergovernment agreement. If we're going to do the agreement now and then the zoning has a glitch, we got a problem. My second thought is you said 3.9% going to LIHTC.
3.9 million, yes.
3.9 million. We're going to have to figure out a way. This is private money, so I cannot understand why we keep trying to work with federal money. There are a lot of strings attached to LIHTC projects. So even though you have 3.9 million and you're going just for LIHTC funding, you may come into some glitches there. So that's not a selling point for me. I would love for us to go into more of public and private partnerships in any type of housing arena. And the Jackson Street project, I think you said there was, you said there is no design, right?
Correct. What you have right now is the referendum language.
But now when you say design, you're talking about the engineering design.
Really, any kind of design beyond just the language.
There were pictures that was shown to us, which made me buy into the Jackson.
For the referendum, yeah.
For the referendum.
Yep.
So.
That's the extent so far. So.
But my point is, there's something out there. I don't expect a new design to look so different from what we were first presented.
Right.
So there is a design out there, and I do question again the LIHTC. That does bring on us working with the federal government, which brings a lot of other things. And I do think that we should do the rezoning first before we go for the agreement.
Commissioner Thorne, just a clarifying point in the manager's discussion of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I believe, Manager Cowell, you used LIHTC just as a sort of prominent example.
No, LIHTC is actually by CDO how this is required to go. So that was a part of actually the original approval by CDO. It was to be divided into those two categories. The LIHTC project could be a public-private partnership. Matter of fact, I'd say most often they are. Beyond just the application for the LIHTC and so on.
But because it's LIHTC, you have a lot of other federal regulations that tie with that.
Mm-hmm.
And even when it's a LIHTC project, that developer, if you apply for something, it don't mean you're going to get it.
Absolutely.
So that is not a selling point. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, I actually agree with Commissioner Fisher about the need to have a public work session on this. I've read stuff about comments online and such on this where it looks as it's presented as if it's like you're either for student development or not. I think this is a different project because this is not just student development and housing like we've seen on Broad Street that's come up recently, or that goes on the Mark that I pass by all the time on the Firefly. This is student housing that's being supported and enabled because of a swap of county land. And that's an important distinction there. So it's not a question of one, either one is for student housing, and this, if you're questioning this, means you're against dense student housing. I think that's a different issue. I think we need to have more time on this for the public, because there hasn't been time for the public. And I brought out, I don't have my 500-page thing, but I have my North Downtown Athens Master Plan study here, which is not, this was a plan. We don't have to follow it exactly, but there was a plan that had probably about 9 months of public input on it and included that part of with these these parcels as part of downtown, and I remember very much there being a discussion of, this is like, we're expanding where downtown is, so that we will not think of this as the edge of downtown. This is going to be a vibrant part of downtown, and there's going to be a community center here in the Art Walk. It's okay if we change our minds, but this was a community decision and input, and we've heard again tonight from the developers and the legal team involved that they've been working on this for a year. And so there's a lot that hasn't been available for some of the commission and for clearly for the public to see. So I think that's important to get in there as well. I am really concerned about the Jackson Street walk. I went back and I looked at that language, and it does say that it is an example, and it doesn't have to be there. But there's not much land left there. I've also asked, and I need for clarification, those public spaces, there are little bits of triangle that they're saying, I forget the word that we used for easements, public easements.
Yeah, public easement.
Like, what could actually be put on there? I mean, I'm not sure how they would be I need to know more about how they would be incorporated or could actually be incorporated into this Jackson Street walk. Our manager talked about the ADA spaces, but the agenda report says that the ADDA is very lukewarm about using that option and doesn't mention at all the artist spaces there. I know some of us saw those in Greenville. That was like a great space having that there and such. So, and again, like, I don't know how we're going to do that Art Street. Like, we have to talk about that somehow. We have to have some idea what we're doing with that as we're moving forward in here. I did have some specific questions in addition that came up during your review here, and that was looking at the usage numbers for Lay Park, because I think since I talked with you last week, now there was mention of what were the number of parking spots in the?
Inside the deck?
Yeah, for the
50 spaces.
50 spaces. After I left our meeting the other day, I went by the Lay Park parking lot. It was pretty full at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so the usage numbers, what are the usage numbers? And then what happens in the summer with the pool? Their usage numbers go up a whole lot. And so, in terms of that pool really be able to use by the public. So I am interested in that. And also, this is just a specific thing on the Hoyt House with the timeline, because I thought there was a very specific timeline that you referred to before in terms of having to have a place to move it to. And so, but that's a side piece. I think it's some of these bigger issues for me. And I also, the financing of the deck. I've gone over that. This was helpful to go over it again. We went over it last week. I read over it again. We went over it tonight, but I could still use another going over to make sure that we're there. When you're talking about that money that we could use from one parking that we were using on the Washington Street, and we could use that money now on this new deck, if we didn't use it, where would it go? I think the implication was it might go into the general fund there. So there are, really putting all the expenses out there, and just so that we all see exactly what they are. I was trying to make a little chart myself, but I could, with that, because there's another $1 million or $2 million that Lay Park might need as well. So putting those all together so we know what we are getting into here. Thank you. But I'll go along with Commissioner Fisher on that work session.
Commissioner Hamby.
Yeah, I know, just since the last point was about parking, I'll just bring this up. So, and Manager Cowell mentioned that the new parking deck would primarily consist of monthly renters and such as that, and that's probably true. But what will happen is that those monthly renters that are now in the College Square deck and the Washington Street deck will move over to that, thus freeing up College Avenue and Washington Street deck for more hourly parking, which then increases the revenue part for this county to realize. The new parking deck on the core property the split will still be the same between the Downtown Development Authority and the county government. So there's parking revenue as it's being met will be realized there as well. So even though you're shifting the debt from the Washington Street current debt over to, you're basically extending the debt is what we're doing. You're still making some good general fund dollars off of parking revenues for downtown because people are coming downtown.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start with the ADDA. So I go onto their webpage every month, and I guess based on the May 20th vote, the ADDA is going to be the agent that's going to be the intermediary between the county and the developer, so that's that. But I want us to be aware and keep our eyes on the fact that the ADDA does not post meetings, they do not post minutes, they do not film their meetings. Here, their last meeting that they posted was on March 11, 2021. That is significant because we can't keep up with what's going on if there are updates.
The meetings are on the calendar every month.
This is what's on
Our
the
calendar every month that Shamika puts out, the meetings for ADDA are on that calendar.
I'm not debating. I just know every single Sunday night, I print out the calendar, and this is what I printed last night. It says the very last meeting that was filmed and posted was March 11th, 2021. I'm not saying yes, bad, good. I'm just saying let's just keep our eyes on this if we want to know updates. If it's on the calendar every month, let's watch it. If we are curious, if we want to, it sounds like we're all a little concerned. Some of us are a little nervous, and some of us are skeptical. We should have the right to easily be able to go online and see it. And if it's online every month, let's just go online every month if we're concerned, skeptical, or nervous, and watch it. Number two, I don't understand what the benefits are. I'm just curious. After the May 20th vote, I recall several commissioners saying, wow, the $7 million, that's great. How could we turn that down? But, I mean, gosh, I was thinking, why would a developer purchase a property and then say, in addition to me purchasing the property, I'm willing to give you $7 million. I understand there are credits and whatnot, but there's so many unsure things in this document, and I had a team of people, and I read read it cover to cover. So many unanswered questions. Nobody in this room will go buy a house, will go pick out a house and move into the house, and then the next week say, honey, could you make an appointment with the bank so we can go to the bank and figure out what our interest rate is? Oh, honey, can you make an appointment with the banker so we can find out if our escrow is going to come out? That's what we're doing here. I'm not a fan of the we'll figure it out on the back end policy. This is the process, and we talk a lot about our processes are not in the right order. There's a lot of room to improve the process. This could be a very believable, very supportive, project, but for a team of people to be working on this for a year, I would have liked to receive an update on a monthly basis instead of 550 pages. This is a bad precedent. You're expecting us to read this. Most won't, some will, but we're going to miss things. We're not going to have time to ask questions. I would like to see a decision pushed out until 2026, that is.
Commissioner Wright.
Yeah, I was hoping that we could be giving staff specific questions that they can answer. The sooner we do that, this agenda item will have 19 days posted from Friday until voting on the 4th. And so this gives staff a couple weeks to be getting the answers to specific questions that are going to help us in processing this. And if the mayor were to do a work session, I think all those questions still need to be brought forward so that our time is being spent answering questions for processing. And I just think that the sooner we get that to staff, a lot of times there takes more time, takes a lot of time, and the sooner we get the questions specifically about this, they can be answered, and then we can be processing those specifics. Thanks.
Commissioner Fisher and then Johnson.
And I can agree with my colleague Allison Wright. And Mayor, maybe we can call a special call session to do a work session before November 4th, if my colleagues got a flavor for that. But, you know, for me, I'm trying to look at the future and what this development brings. And I think in the future, I think about Tom Lay Park that's there. And we know there's going to be some programming issues. And I can see 5-10 years from now that Tom Lay may not even be there, might not even be in assistance, because we got student housing, we got a parking deck, and who Tom Lay is for those people in the community. Why go there? If we're gonna start having issues with drop-off issues for summers and things like that, I can see that continue to start decreasing the number of young people that's serving in this community, and then there's no use for Tom Lay anymore. So I'm really looking 10 years down the road and what that may look like over in that area. And so for me, I don't really think I'm asking a lot. I'm just asking, let's do a work session. To my colleague's point, let's get all the questions out there. And again, I'm not against the project or I'm for the project. I'm not sure where I'm going right now, but I do understand when we talk about the future and the impact that student housing, and I said this earlier, the government should not be in the student housing business, but also looking at what's going to happen to Tom Lay Park, which is a staple in this community, where a large African-American community attends, and what it's going to look like 10 years from now. So I'm trying to look ahead, what that's going to look like, and the impact that this could potentially make on that particular area. And what it's going to do is start a trend down College Avenue. Well, here we go with student housing. And I'm going to continue to say this. I don't know why developers don't have conversation with O.C.G.A. about what their growth is going to be. We've had those conversations, and O.C.G.A. is not going to grow to 50,000. So I'm not sure why those conversations are not had, but it bothers me that we're in the, that we're trying to, the government is sort of getting into the student housing business, and the benefits are what they are, but at the same time, at what cost? What happens to Tom Lay in 10 years and it's gone? So for me, and again, that's the only thing I'm asking for, Mayor. Do a work session. If you want to do a special call, meeting before November 4th, vote. And again, if my colleagues feel compelled to attend that before the 4th, I'll be in favor for that also.
Got Commissioner Johnson, Thornton, and Link.
Thank you, Mayor. Here are some questions. If the residents that are going to be living in the structure aren't going to have a unit, a parking space unit that goes along with it, why is the developer building a parking garage? Question number 2, I was the commissioner that asked specifically how the tax commissioner derived at 175,000.
Million.
Yeah, wow. 175 million revenue for property tax. I specifically wanted to know how that was derived. And another question, 1,400 bedrooms. Some kids just want to bring their cars to Athens. That's downtown. We barely have parking for shopping. There's nothing in the study that speaks to parking management, parking implementation for 14, let's just say, glass half empty, 1,400 cars show up after this starts. Another question, why does HUD need a signed IGA before they release the covenant? I don't see how one is contingent on the other? Why not, if it's been dormant for a while, why not just release the covenant? And instead of the IGA being signed first comes first. And I heard earlier the necessity to rezone, and I had a conversation with the county manager about it. I'm still unclear, but that's just because I don't know as much as I want to about zoning. But if someone in the manager's office can point me specifically to where it states in the ordinance that it is a must, that we have to do the rezoning. And I think I might have one more question. Nope, that's it.
So, Commissioner Johnson, I think I captured your questions. The first one was really about the efficacy of the project regarding the private parking deck, not the public parking deck. Is that right?
Well, I was curious about why a developer would build a parking deck if if they're building student housing and none of the parking spaces are going to students.
So in this program, they have a separate parking deck that's for the residents. I don't know if the developer wants to speak to that, if you'd like to hear that.
And that's the 200 spaces?
Sure, thank you. The private project would have a 650 space parking deck that would be for residents, and then the 425 space deck would be for the public as part of the land swap.
Thank you for the clarification.
And then the second question was how the $175 million approximate valuation was derived. I would suspect that's the typical kind of room value for student dwelling and kind of the ancillary components as well as the land value.
What the commissioner does is they look at proximity land values in the area, and that assigns the land value component. Then they take what the square footage value is, say, for example, the building across the street, the student housing in that area, and what those square footage values are, and simply apply those to the square footage here. Those are mixed-use buildings, so you have to compare to mixed-use buildings. You know, I doubt the commissioner went to a specific building and said this building and not that building. I think they just grabbed buildings in the proximity to make because again, we're just simply asking for an estimate of what those would be. They're not calculating the tax bill yet. That will come later.
But people are excited about the estimate, and that's exactly what I was asking for. Here's a really quick 8-second example. In my neighborhood, there's a Phase 3 development. There are houses across the street. My house was evaluated on the 2025 home, and I have a 2013 home, and it's right across the street. So I was actually, you're right, those specific details, what property, what building, what not, and I can do the math myself. I just was curious exactly what they did to come up with that evaluation, because some are excited about that $175 million increase.
Yeah. And we just asked them to do it, I think, in a relatively conservative manner so that we weren't overestimating what that value. I think the value actually could end up higher than that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And then you had a question about sort of the HUD guidance, and I suspect that's kind of probably outside of our purview. And then the rezone is driven by the reality that the footprint under the parking deck would become a G, or government zoned property, and then what is currently the two triangles would become CD. So effectively, there's a swap in zoning, which is really the kind of underlying rationale for the way that the project is coming out of the ground, that you're kind of converting two public property triangles into a public property rectangle.
Thank you.
And it's a two-step process, too. Those rezonings would be considered independent of one another also. So the piece zone G going to CD would come first, and then the parking deck piece, which would go to G, would come second from it as well. So independent decisions to be made. And again, you retain all the discretion that you always have with rezonings in those.
Mayor, if I might just quickly add a little more context to the tax estimates. Manager Cowell's correct. We asked for this as a bit of a courtesy. Let's talk about the scale of benefit. And we connected the tax assessor with representatives for the developer and their design team so they could learn more about how much commercial, how many bedrooms, and so on. Just as a quick note, looking at the tax assessor's records online, right now the mark is assessed at $171 million. The new development on Finley Street is assessed at 170 million, and then the standard, which is probably the closest proximate development, is 110. So they're in the ballpark for what you're seeing of this kind of development elsewhere.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I've got Commissioner Thornton Lincoln Myers.
My question is about, I don't know, I think it was Commissioner Wright. I can't remember who else. We met with U.G.A., a year or two ago?
What'd I do?
You always doing something. But we met and we learned.
Enrollment projections.
Yeah, enrollment projections. And I assume it's public information. It was just shared. And I do think that is something that I would like staff to get a record. Oh, you got it?
That's the book
Yeah.
right there.
Okay, all right, so we.
We're on it.
Andrew carries everything.
Oh, Andrew got it, okay. Developers need to have that. Developers need to have that.
I anticipate they do, Commissioner.
And then, and my next thing, which I, just thinking out the box a little bit, the students aren't going nowhere. They ain't going nowhere. And they trying to push some other folks somewhere. And it's causing some kind of conflict, spoken or not spoken. Maybe this is a good time to just start speculating what a student district would look like. We're right into the future land use plan. Maybe looking at what a student district would look like. U.G.A. is growing, even though they do have a plan. And again, I'll say again, developers need to know what that plan is instead of building all this stuff at one time. But and it's public, so I'm glad it's public. But I would like to, if we have this discussion, I don't know if it's about, and I do disagree with you about a called meeting for November the 4th. We do a lot of meetings back to back, and I am not going to be comfortable being crunched to get in November the 4th. I'd rather take our time and get it right for the first, the first go around. But I do think we need to start, somebody said that, they haven't reached out. Well, if UGA, maybe we need to be intentional reaching out, because if that documentation is out here, that should provide some guidelines on development. So I would like to somewhere figure out a work session. Let's do this and do this right and get all the information. I do like having the questions. I hope that if we do have this work session, Commissioner Johnson will reiterate her questions, because I didn't hear all the responses. But that was my point about UGA and their enrollment. So that was my thought.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, Mayor, you might be able to answer this question. How many bedrooms total are planned for the NODA project in its final phases?
So I think it's fair to say that the NODA project is an evolving project, and will continue to be, once we move beyond phase 2, which is about to come out of the ground. The ballpark for NODA was 1,500 or 1,600 bedrooms if all 5 phases would have been completed, kind of based on, say, the 2020 era concept of it. That's,
And
again,
NODA
ballpark.
is specifically intended for regular residents, families, working class folks, retirees. I think it's safe to say that Lay Park isn't going anywhere. There will be plenty of customers in NODA who can walk to Lay Park. So I'm not worried about this student housing pushing Lay Park anywhere. In fact, I'm looking forward to seeing Lay Park become even more active with those kids moving into brand new affordable housing right downtown.
I was going to respond to one question for Commissioner Johnson. I looked back at the emails from the HUD attorney, and it looks like the reason they want to see that development agreement before they release it is because they want to make sure that the playground's being replaced. But I'm a little unclear, and David could offer some clarification, because it said in another place that program was no longer in existence, but that's what I have, the information I have.
Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, I'm following up on something else that I need to understand more is the parking business, because basically we're trading these two pieces of property for a parking deck to expand our downtown parking business, which I realize I do not quite understand, because when I was going over the numbers today, it looked like for that parking deck, with the anticipated long-term people in there at the higher rate than at the Washington, we still wouldn't have enough money from the proceeds, because that has to be backed up with this other money. So we're not necessarily, I mean, for the first 15 years, you're not making money on it there. So and Commissioner Hamby is talking about the number of students who are already parking in our downtown parking decks. So, I realize I have no idea how many students, how much of the, we're talking about going, Commissioner Fisher will talk about us going into the student housing business, but clearly we're already in the student parking business, right? So, I think it would be helpful for me and for the public to understand how many long-term patrons there are at these other parking decks, and if we have any idea how many of them are students. And I don't know why, according to what I read, this one's supposed to be more expensive, so I'm not sure why people would move over to this one. But, so I need to understand that parking business a little bit more, because that seems to be what we're getting at. We're getting the affordable housing, and we're getting a mural, and we're getting sewer, and we're getting more parking business. So, and I know that every year we use parking fees in our general budget. So I guess I realize there's some stuff I don't understand about.
Commissioner, I
how
think
we're
what we
doing
could
public
easily
parking.
do is get from the Downtown Development Authority a spreadsheet of our public parking inventory that would include those hourly users and the long-term users. And I think they can generally tag which of those are attached to residential activity, which I can share is many in the College and Washington Street decks.
Yeah, and as much as, I'd like to also just echo that I went to look at the minutes, and I may be looking in the wrong place, but I can't find any minutes that are posted. There's with the ADDA has a place with minutes, but then you click on them and there's nothing there.
It's under the link that notes announcements on the Downtown Development Authority webpage.
Oh, under announcements, but I am there, and I'm clicking on meeting minutes.
We can look at the
Okay,
website
but
later.
anyway, that needs to be, obviously, it's not that easy to find, because there's a blank page there. Okay. Yeah, I get the agenda, but not the minutes. Thank you.
Commissioner Thornton?
I would, can we get a copy of, and Commissioner Myers reminded me of that with the downtown planning. Was this just for the Bethel project?
Well, that included the North Downtown Athens Master Planning Study, included the Bethel project and the area around it.
And I do remember when, I guess it was
Oh, the minutes
Jim
are there, okay.
Crowley, Joe Crowley?
Jack
Crowley.
Yeah, he
Kind of led that. And I remember he didn't include Bethel originally. So there was some back and forth. I just think electronically, can we get a can all the commissioners get a copy?
I have a hard copy. I don't
Yeah, and we'll provide you there's a link to it, so
Okay.
we'll provide you that link.
Well, for those of us who don't have, I have a hard copy too, but that was just because I was on the committee. But for everybody else, and see how it fits with what we're doing. I mean, here we go again. We do all of these plans, but we don't follow the plan.
Yeah,
So,
and I guess the only thing I would add to that is just, again, I want to go back to kind of my first statement with this, and this is probably more for staff's sake here, is that to reinforce that what we brought forward to you isn't necessarily related directly to that plan, for example. What it is related to is the action that you took in June. So I know there's discussion about should there be student housing, not student housing? Is it consistent with the plan? Is it not consistent with the plan? As far as the action that we brought forward, for us, those questions were answered with the June action, because the June action said, as long as they develop it in this way, we'll enter into this agreement. Our job was to bring to you the details of that agreement. And so I just want to make sure that that's kind of clear. And I actually also want to say, and I certainly hope I don't step on anybody's toes or offend anybody with this, but I actually would say that the precedent that we've set here is actually a precedent that I would hope to set again. And by that, what I mean is a couple things. One is, we didn't bring this to you until it was completely completed. That's why it's 500-something pages. That's what we should be doing. So our precedent should be, we should bring to you completed documents, not partially completed, not half completed. That's important to me that we do that. The other is, we extended to each of you the opportunity, and most of you took advantage of that opportunity, and I would offer it again between now and November 4th, the opportunity to talk in more detail about what's in the proposal in this package. Because again, I think it's important that you know that, to the extent that we can share it with you in the time that we have to doing that, that's something we should be doing on these large projects. And that has nothing to do whether you vote November 4th or you hold over or anything. That's just something we should be doing as a matter of course. So I would offer that up to say that the process that we're proceeding, I can't be held accountable for anything that preceded July 28th, but I can say from July 28th forward, those things are very important to me, and those are things that we're going to strive to continue to do with these larger projects. And that's the precedent that I hope to set, not what's gone on for the last year or whatever it may be. You may certainly have disagreements with that, but I want to make certain that you all have what you need in order to seriously evaluate the decisions that are brought before you. And again, that's not to say you may need more time to digest that. That's entirely up to you all. I just don't want you to have more time because there's documents missing or because those kinds of things, which I think sometimes did occur in the past. So.
Mayor.
Got Commissioner Johnson and Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor. I got 2 quick points. So I wanted to just say, when my comment earlier about the ADDA and not finding anything, I really was, yes, I wanted to say that, but it was more speaking to the inconsistency. Our residents are the ones that look for our meetings. I mean, I do too, but to have them somewhere else on our website, I do see that. Most have them somewhere else. But residents expect to see them on our master calendar, and I would like to get to that place where we're consistent. The master calendar at the bottom of the homepage.
I understand that, and I think we could look at having affiliated public authority meeting notices kind of there as well. Of course, they serve as a differently chartered state entity, much like the Classic Center Authority, for example.
Yeah, they actually post theirs on the master calendar. The Classic Center Authority, they do. But my second point is, when it comes to what we need or what I need, is I had like 6 or 7 Zoom calls. I had 27 people I spoke with over 3 days, and what I would need is time to host a town hall, because I turned my phone off this morning because I had so many last minute, just ask this question, and I just think 4 days, 5 days, 19 days, this is a really important project. This sounds like it's going to be an exciting project, but we do want to understand it, and I would have liked the time to understand it, digest it, and be able to have a town hall and explain it. For those 27 people and, plus the Zooms people. That's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, and Bob, and thank you. You're right. Probably for the first time in a long time, everything was in place, and I truly appreciate staff putting the time in. But again, I think, and to Commissioner Johnson's point, we just, I looked at documents my whole career, and I really, but, and like the development guy, they worked on this thing for a year. I don't think I'm just say, give us some grace to say, hey, okay, let's get all the stuff out on the table, everything that we need to know, then move forward with a vote. And I do it again, since I've been here first time that we not coming back and grabbing stuff. Everything is there, and I really do appreciate it. So I'm not throwing shade at you guys. I'm just saying I think as a group, as our responsibility to our taxpayers, the people who elected us, I think it behooves us not to get all the information out there, have all the questions answered, and then move forward. And that's all I'm asking. And again, Mayor, I'm not sure what your thought process is on this, but we got time. I don't think we need to. This probably have to be rushed and stuff. I just think let's do this for the public, for what the people elected us to do, to be accountable, to be transparent. And this is a huge project. Ain't no question about it, huge project. But I just think that for us as an elected body, we make sure all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, which have been done, so we can make, the right vote, whatever vote we're gonna make the right vote and move forward with this. Cause I'm like, it don't need to linger. We need to go ahead and do something. But I just say, just give us some grace.
Yeah, and again, I want to just reinforce that, our job is just to get you the information, put it on the cycle for decision-making. When you make that decision and what other information you need or time you need, that's your call. That's what you do.
I understand.
So, certainly don't take, and I don't think you are, don't take because it's in the cycle for November 4th. That's just the cycle it's in.
Right.
Certainly, we think it's ready for that piece, but ultimately, that's the decision you all have to make.
Speaking to the question of sort of information provision, at least one helpful format might be a drop-in session that overlaps between some day and evening hours, so kind of multiple folks, depending on their station in life, would be able to spend some time around there. We could make similar materials available digitally to those that would be in a drop-in kind of a session. Be very glad to do that. I want to make a couple of notes just kind of based on the conversation. And really the prime one is that it's really geometry that's driving this project. We have two funky triangles, and we have learned that it is physically possible to build parking decks on those triangles, but really fiscally irresponsible if we were to try to do that, because we would have multiple stair towers, multiple elevators, the E word that we love so much. And so when the neighboring property owner, who effectively could do everything they're doing by right without talking to us, engaged with us and said, hey, we could swap these two triangles for this rectangle, and thus you could derive the parking deck that the DDA had long sought for those longtime users. It certainly made sense just from a functionality and practical perspective, because again, they have approximately 4 acres of downtown zone property on which they could do all of the things that are allowed in a downtown zone property, including kind of high-density dwellings, which they could do, again, with just slightly different geometry. I do want to note that I've spent an enormous amount of time in my 13 years as a parent of a child who lives 3 blocks from this location at Lay Park, both on the jungle gym, inside the gymnasium, on the baseball diamond, and at the pool. And I would find that the functionality of Lay Park would continue. Most of the times when I do drive to Lay Park, I tend to park around the back close to the baseball diamond, just because it's at grade with the basketball courts and the baseball diamond and those other things. And as my knees get older, walking up and down those granite steps is less pleasant than it was at an earlier point in life. Do want to note that when we put together the North Downtown project that Commissioner Myers referenced, we were primarily focused on that approximately 18 acres that was in the ownership of ultimately the Athens Housing Authority, both the stuff that was previously known as Bethel Midtown Village, as well as the 5 acres that they've long owned on the corner of Hoyt and College. There was sort of some visioning beyond that that was somewhat ancillary to the North Downtown project itself. And I don't see this project as disrupting either Lay Park or North Downtown. But recognizing, as I think a couple people have commented, that we do continue to grow. To their great credit, U.G.A. has been very explicit about their growth plan, and they've said that they anticipate 5 years of 600 new students per year added to the student population. And I can assure you that every student project developer in the country knows that. And they've visited that website and they've read that report, and they've anticipated forthcoming projects based on that very open, explicit public language. I could send everybody in the room a link to the report that is on UGA's website. And I have found, certainly as a 30-year resident, that clustering student housing close to downtown and close to campus means that, you have the experience that I often see on Thomas Street, which is that kids are walking to class, which is what we would hope for, that they're not having to get in their cars nearly as often. They're not having to be in neighborhoods to the degree that they would be. I mean, essentially, this is almost like the exercise of when you squeeze, one of those long balloons. If the students are the air molecules inside that balloon, they're going to squeeze into some space in this community. And if we give them a space adjacent to campus, that means they're less likely to squeeze into our neighborhood. So I think overall this is a good project. Certainly the public benefits that Bob has outlined that you see in the report are strong ones. And, somebody who worked for the school district for a very long time, having over $1 million annually of new revenue and no new operational burden is also meaningful. So we can talk probably first thing in the morning about maybe what a work session or drop-in session could look like. We'll note that in the late spring, there were a series of those sessions. Project physically really hasn't changed a great deal, a little bit of details around the edges, but I think we could dust off a lot of that material. So appreciate everybody's input. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, there was a third drop-in session a month and a half ago, I guess.
It was not publicized, though.
Yeah.
It was not publicized, but it was not publicized.
Yeah, so we could make sure that this one's well publicized. Very quickly, Commissioner
Very
Myers.
quickly on those drop-in sessions, I mean, what we're talking about is drop-in sessions about the other things that have to do with the county involvement. The drop-in session with the developer was about the development itself. It wasn't looking at the parking, the effect on Jackson Street, the effect on Lay Park. So that's sort of the implication. What we need is the focus on how it impacts with our
Those public
properties.
interfaces.
Right.
All right, we have one more item. Item 19 is the North Oconee River Sanitary Sewer Interceptor Project, and this is the construction work order. We are ready to dig. Commissioner Davenport.
One quick question. Put it on consent. So just reading facts and issues number 8 and 9. It says 2, but the attachment is only showing 1, or am I reading that attachment wrong? Just the North Oconee River crossing. It says. Let me go back. Jacobs on behalf of PUD. Let me get to it. 36-inch upper North Oconee East Interceptor freeing up capacity in upper North Oconee. Both UNO and UNOE are in the North Oconee sewer basin. But it said there's 2 of these pipes that's crossing the river, but I'm only saying 1. Is that just? Are there 2 or is it just 1?
There's currently pipes on both sides of the river. They drain to the same plant. So what that's telling you is that if you move it across the river to the bigger pipe, you have capacity for it, but you're not sending it to a different plant, which is generally a practice we've avoided.
Okay.
He's ready.
He's ready.
Any other questions about the poop? Consent?
Consent.
All right, 19 is on consent. All right, friends, we're winning. All right, we are going to adjourn the public meeting, and to give everybody a brief break, if everybody could be back in by 9:15, then everybody can make sure that that line works.
Yeah, I did too.